Prologue, the contract. The brandy glass felt cold against my palm, though the liquid inside burned like liquid fire down my throat. I needed the burn, needed something to ground me in this absurd reality where my father sat across from me in his mahogany-paneled study, calmly discussing the sale of my future, as if negotiating a corporate merger. Elena, his voice cut through my spiraling thoughts, sharp as the edge of broken glass. Are you listening? I set the glass down on the side table with more force than necessary. How could I not? You're selling me to a stranger. Don't be dramatic. Robert Castellane, Senator Robert Castellane, as the world knew him, leaned back in his leather chair, the picture of patrician composure. It's a marriage arrangement, not a sale. And Dominic Ashford is hardly a stranger. His family has been in finance for generations. I've never met him. An oversight will correct at dinner tomorrow. My father's tone suggested the matter was settled, the way all matters were settled in the Castellane household. By his decree alone, I stood, pacing to the window that overlooked our estate's manicured gardens. Beyond the perfectly trimmed hedges and imported Italian fountains lay the rest of Virginia horse country, where old money clung to tradition like moss to stone. This was the world I'd been born into, the world that was now suffocating me. There are other ways to solve your financial problems, I said, my reflection in the glass pale and ghost-like. Sell the house in Nantucket, the apartment in Manhattan. God knows we don't need for properties. The properties are leveraged. My father's admission came quietly, almost ashamed. Almost. The campaign debts are more substantial than I initially disclosed. I turned to face him, studying the man who had raised me with an iron fist wrapped in velvet gloves. At 62, Robert Castellane still cut an imposing figure, silver-haired, square-jawed, the kind of man who looked born to power. But now I saw the lines of stress bracketing his mouth, the shadows beneath his eyes. How substantial? 12 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. Jesus Christ, Dad, what did you spend it on? What I had to. His jaw tightened. The super PAC requirements, the consultants, the media buys. Running for Senate isn't cheap. Elena, you know that. I did know. I'd watched him navigate the political landscape my entire life, trading favors and influence like currency. What I hadn't known was that he'd gambled everything and lost. So you're trading me instead. Bitterness coated every word. What does the Ashford family get out of this arrangement, besides a trophy wife for their son? Legitimacy. My father stood, moving to the bar cart to refill his own glass. Dominic Ashford is brilliant with money. Turned his family's investment firm into a billion-dollar empire by 35. But his methods are controversial. Aggressive acquisitions, hostile takeovers, operating in gray areas that make traditional society uncomfortable. You mean he's a criminal? I mean he's ruthless. My father met my eyes. He wants what our family has. Respectability, political connections, a seat at tables where money alone won't buy entry. Marriage to Castellane gives him that, and gives you $12 million to pay off your debts. The full picture crystallized with sickening clarity. This is disgusting. This is survival. My father's voice hardened, the steel beneath the polish finally showing. Do you think I want this? I've given you every advantage. Elena, the best schools, the finest things. I was saving you for someone worthy, someone from our world. But that world is crumbling, and we either adapt or we drown. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the study. What if I refuse? The question hung between us, and in my father's silence, I found my answer. There was no refusing. The Castellane family had operated on duty and obligation for 200 years. Daughters married well to cement alliances. Sons entered politics or law to extend the family's reach. Personal happiness was a luxury we couldn't afford. When I asked finally, defeat heavy in my voice, the wedding is in 6 weeks. Enough time to make it look romantic rather than transactional. My father's expression softened marginally. I'm not a monster, Elena. I wouldn't do this if there were any other option. You're just a pragmatist. The words tasted like ash. Yes. He didn't deny it, didn't try to pretty it up with platitudes about my happiness or assurances that love might grow. Robert Castellane dealt in realities, not fantasies. Dominic is aware this is a business arrangement. He won't expect feelings, just the appearance of a proper marriage. How generous of him. Elena, I'd like to be alone now. I moved toward the door, needing to escape before the walls close in completely. If I'm to be someone's wife in 6 weeks, I should probably prepare myself. I left before he could respond, my heels clicking against the marble floors of our family home. Each step echoed like a countdown, marking time until my freedom, such as it was, came to an end in my bedroom. I locked the door and leaned against it, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Arranged marriage. It sounded medieval, something from a period drama, not a reality in the 21st century. Yet here I was, a commodity to be traded for debt relief and social climbing. I moved to my desk, pulling out my laptop with trembling hands. If I was going to marry Dominic Ashford, I needed to know exactly who he was. The search results loaded, and a face appeared on screen that made my breath catch. Strong, angular features, dark hair that looked perpetually tousled as if he'd just run his hands through it, and eyes so pale green they seemed almost colorless in certain lights. But it was his expression that held me, not quite smiling, but amused, as if he found the entire world faintly ridiculous. I clicked through articles, piecing together a portrait of my future husband. 35 years old, Harvard Business School, though he dropped out after 1 semester to launch his first startup. Sold it for $50 million at 23. Used that capital to acquire a struggling investment firm, which he transformed into Ashford Capital, now one of the most feared names in corporate finance. The articles painted him as brilliant but brutal. The Wolf of Wall Street, if the wolf had an MBA and better lawyers. One profile quipped. He specialized in identifying struggling companies, acquiring them through aggressive means, then either stripping them for parts or restructuring them into profitability. Critics called him a vulture. Supporters call him a visionary. I found a video interview from last year, some finance conference, where he sat on a panel discussing market disruption. He spoke with quiet authority, his voice deeper than I'd expected, with a slight rasp that suggested too many late nights and too much whiskey. When another panelist challenged his methods, Dominic's smile sharpened into something predatory. Sentiment doesn't pay dividends, he said, those pale eyes fixed on the camera. I don't apologize for seeing opportunities others miss. That's not ruthlessness. That's clarity. Clarity. I replayed the word in my mind. Was that what this marriage was to him? Just another opportunity. Another acquisition to add to his portfolio? My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Dinner tomorrow at 7. Ashford Manor. Dress appropriately. Ashford Manor. Of course the man lived in a manor. Probably some Gothic monstrosity purchased from old Virginia aristocracy who couldn't maintain it anymore. The thought made me smile bitterly. At least we had that in common, both from families clinging to relevance in a changing world. I spent the rest of the evening researching, memorizing details about the man who would become my husband. His parents were dead, mother from cancer when he was 15, father from a heart attack 5 years later. No siblings, no close family that I could find. He collected modern art, drove a vintage Aston Martin, and owned properties in Manhattan, London, and the British Virgin Islands. The society pages showed him at various events, always alone or with a different woman on his arm. Models, actresses, heiresses. Never the same one twice. The message was clear. Dominic Ashford didn't do relationships. He did transactions, which made this arranged marriage perfect for him, I supposed. All the benefits of society wife without the inconvenience of actual emotion. At midnight, I finally closed my laptop and stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. In 6 weeks, I would stand in a church and promise to love, honor, and cherish a man I'd never met. Would smile for photographs that would run in the Washington Post and Town and Country. Would move into his home and learn to play the role of Mrs. Dominic Ashford. The thought should have terrified me. It did terrify me. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. A strange, dark curiosity about the man with pale green eyes and a reputation for ruthlessness, about what it would be like to live in his world, to be bound to someone who operated without sentiment or softness. Perhaps, I thought as sleep finally claimed me, there was a certain freedom in a marriage without love. No expectations to disappoint. No heart to break. Just two people bound by contract and mutual benefit, playing their roles until death or dissolution parted them. I would meet Dominic Ashford tomorrow, would look into those cold, clever eyes and try to glimpse the man beneath the reputation, would smile and make pleasant conversation, while we both pretended this was anything other than what it was. A business deal dressed up in white lace and roses. And then in 6 weeks, I would become his wife, the woman who married the wolf. Chapter 1, The Wolf's Table. The wrought iron gates of Ashford Manor opened silently, as if they had been expecting us. My father's Mercedes glided up the tree-lined drive, and with each passing second, my mouth grew drier, my palms damper. I'd spent the entire day preparing for this dinner, selecting the right dress, practicing the right smile, rehearsing conversation topics that wouldn't reveal how thoroughly I'd researched my future husband. None of it had prepared me for the reality of the estate itself. Ashford Manor rose in the Virginia hills like something out of a Gothic novel, all dark stone and sharp angles, with towers that clawed at the darkening sky. Ivy climbed the walls in deliberate patterns, and the windows glowed with warm light that somehow made the building seem more forbidding rather than welcoming. It was beautiful in the way a knife was beautiful, elegant, dangerous, designed to cut. Impressive, my father murmured, though his tone suggested he'd expected nothing less. I said nothing, too focused on controlling my breathing. In moments, I would meet the man I'd agreed to marry, the man who bought my future for $12 million and the Castellane name. A valet appeared as we pulled up to the front entrance. He opened my door with practiced efficiency, and I stepped out into the cooling evening air. September in Virginia meant the last gasp of summer heat, giving way to autumn's chill, and I was grateful for the long sleeves of my navy dress. It was elegant but not ostentatious. But from last season, I wanted to appear refined, not desperate to impress. The front door opened before we reached it, revealing a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair pulled into an immaculate bun. Her eyes swept over us with the assessing gaze of someone who'd spent decades managing a household. Senator Castellane, Miss Castellane. Her voice was crisp, British accented. Welcome to Ashford Manor. I'm Mrs. Thornberry, the estate manager. Mr. Ashford is expecting you in the drawing room. We followed her through an entrance hall that belonged in a museum. The floors were black and white marble, laid in a pattern that drew the eye toward a sweeping staircase. Oil paintings lined the walls, not the expected portraits of ancestors, but modern pieces that jarred against the classical architecture. A Rothko hung beside what looked like a Basquiat. The effect was discordant, almost aggressive, as if the house itself couldn't decide whether it belonged to the past or the present. Mr. Ashford prefers contemporary art, Mrs. Thornberry said, noticing my gaze. Says the old masters are too obsessed with death and religion. He'd rather look at color and chaos. The comment surprised me, both that she volunteered it and that it revealed something human about the man we were about to meet. I'd expected someone who collected art as another form of investment, not someone who had actual opinions about it. The drawing room was vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens that stretched into shadow. More modern art adorned the walls, and a fire crackled in a marble fireplace large enough to stand in. The furniture was a careful blend of antique and contemporary, a Victorian sofa reupholstered in charcoal velvet, mid-century modern chairs that probably cost more than my car, a glass coffee table that looked like liquid frozen in time. And standing by the windows, backlit by the dying light, was Dominic Ashford. The photographs hadn't done him justice. Or perhaps they'd been too kind. He was taller than I'd expected, well over 6 feet, with a kind of lean, powerful build that suggested he did more than sit behind a desk. He wore dark trousers and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle. No tie, top 2 buttons undone, casual in a way that somehow made him seem more dangerous rather than less. He turned as we entered, and those pale green eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that stole my breath. They were even more unsettling in person, almost luminous against his tan skin and dark hair, eyes that saw too much, that calculated and assessed in the space of a heartbeat. Senator Castellane. His voice was exactly as I remembered from the video. Deep, slightly rough, with an edge that suggested he didn't suffer fools. He crossed the room in long strides, extending a hand to my father. Thank you for coming. Mr. Ashford. My father's handshake was firm, politician perfect. Please, call me Robert. We're be family, after all. Something flickered in Dominic's eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or cynicism. Family. Yes. He turned to me, and I felt the full force of his attention like a physical touch. Elena, Mr. Ashford. I extended my hand, determined to maintain composure. He took it, his grip firm and warm, holding on a fraction longer than strictly necessary. His thumb brushed across my knuckles, deliberate or accidental. I couldn't tell. Dominic, please. I think we're past formalities. Are we? The words slipped out before I could stop them, sharper than intended. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. We will be. Mrs. Thornberry cleared her throat discreetly. Dinner will be served in 30 minutes, sir. Shall I bring drinks? Please. Scotch for the senator? Dominic glanced at my father, who nodded. And for you, Elena? White wine, thank you. The Chablis, Mrs. Thornberry. The 15. Dominic released my hand, finally, gesturing toward the seating area. Please sit. We have much to discuss. My father settled into one of the Victorian chairs with the ease of someone accustomed to negotiating in expensive rooms. I chose a sofa, and Dominic sat across from us, leaning back with one ankle crossed over his knee, the picture of relaxed confidence. I assume you've researched me, he said, addressing the statement to me rather than my father. It's what I would have done. I met his gaze steadily. Yes. And you're successful, ruthless, and have a reputation for acquiring things you want by any means necessary. I kept my tone neutral, factual, which makes me wonder why you need to acquire a wife through arrangement rather than conventional means. My father stiffened beside me, but Dominic laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face from coldly handsome to something more human. Direct. I like that. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, those unsettling eyes fixed on mine. The truth? Women find me attractive until they understand what I do for a living. Then I'm either a monster or a challenge to reform. I'm neither interested in being judged nor changed. So you're buying a wife who can't leave once she discovers you're not Prince Charming. Elena, my father warned, but Dominic waved him off. No, let her speak. Honesty is refreshing. He tilted his head, studying me with open curiosity. But to answer your question, yes, essentially. Though I prefer to think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. You get financial security and freedom from your family's expectations. I get legitimacy and a partner who understands this is a transaction, not a romance. The bluntness should have offended me. Instead, I felt a strange relief. At least he wasn't pretending this was anything other than what it was. What exactly do you expect from this transaction? I asked. Mrs. Thornberry returned with our drinks, setting them on the coffee table with practiced silence before departing. Dominic reached for his scotch, neat I noticed, and took a slow sip before answering. Public appearances together. Attendance at social and business functions, as needed. Discretion regarding the nature of our arrangement. He paused, his gaze sharpening. And eventually, an heir. I assume your father mentioned that requirement. Ice flooded my veins. He didn't, actually. Dominic's eyes flicked to my father, whose face had paled slightly. An oversight, I'm sure. The Ashford line doesn't end with me. How romantic, I said, taking a large gulp of wine. Shall we pencil in conception for the calendar? Maybe between the charity gala and the stockholders' meeting. Elena, my father began, but again Dominic interrupted. I deserve that. He set his glass down, his expression softening marginally. I'm not asking for immediate intimacy. We barely know each other. But eventually, yes, I want children. A family, even if it's an unconventional one. Everything about this is unconventional. I finish my wine in another swallow, needing the liquid courage. Forgive me if I'm not thrilled about the breeding clause in my marriage contract. There is no contract, Dominic said quietly. Not legally, anyway. You could refuse this entire arrangement. Walk away right now, and I'd honor that decision. I stared at him, searching for the lie, the manipulation, but his expression was sincere, or at least as sincere as someone with his reputation could manage. My father would still owe you $12 million. That's between him and me, not you. Dominic leaned back again, his gaze never leaving my face. I don't want an unwilling wife. Elena, I want a partner who enters this with open eyes and her own reasons for saying yes. So tell me, setting aside your father's debts, what would you get from this marriage? The question caught me off guard. No one had asked what I wanted. Not my father, not the voice in my head that whispered about duty and obligation. For a long moment, I couldn't answer. Then I thought about my life, about the suffocating expectations of being Robert Castellane's daughter, about the men I'd dated who wanted either my family's connections or my face on their arm, about the future I'd imagined that involved more duty-bound decisions and carefully managed appearances. Freedom, I said finally, from pretending to be someone I'm not, from playing the perfect daughter, the perfect potential wife, the perfect ornament at political fundraisers. I met Dominic's eyes. You don't want love or sentiment. That means I don't have to pretend to feel something I don't. I can just exist, play my role without the exhausting fiction of romance. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition. We're more alike than you think. Are we both trapped by family expectations, both performing roles we never auditioned for? He picked up his scotch again, swirling the amber liquid. The difference is, I broke free by becoming someone people feared too much to control. You're still trying to be good. The observation stung, because it was true. I'd spent my entire life being good. Good daughter, good student, good representation of the Castellane name. And where had it gotten me? Sitting in a stranger's drawing room, negotiating the terms of my own marriage like a corporate merger. Maybe I'm tired of being good, I said softly. Dominic's lips curved into a slow, dangerous smile. Then you come to the right place. Mrs. Thornberry appeared in the doorway. Dinner is served. The dining room continued the aesthetic of controlled chaos. Antique table, modern chairs, contemporary art on walls that probably dated to the 18th century. Place settings were arranged at one end of the table, close enough for conversation without the absurdity of shouting across 12 feet of mahogany. Dominic held my chair, his hand brushing my shoulder as I sat, another touch that seemed deliberate in its casualness. He took the seat at the head of the table, with my father across from me, positioning me at his right hand. The meal was exquisite. Courses that appeared and disappeared with choreographed precision, each one paired with different wine. My father and Dominic discussed business with the ease of men accustomed to wielding power. I listened, contributing when addressed, studying the dynamic between them. They were negotiating, I realized. Not the marriage arrangement. That was settled. This was about something else. Access, influence, the thousand small favors that made the world of money and politics turn. The Senate Finance Committee seat, my father was saying, it comes up for reassignment in January, with the right support. Your campaign debts would look suspicious if they disappeared overnight, Dominic countered. But a series of donations to your PAC, spread across several months, from various shell corporations. He shrugged. That's just standard political funding. And in exchange, nothing illegal. Dominic's smile was sharp. Just access. Early warning on regulatory changes. Introduction to the right people. The usual currency of Washington. I set down my fork with enough force to make both men look at me. You're trading political favors before the wedding even happens. Elena, my father began, but I cut him off. No, let's be clear about what's happening here. You're not just selling me for debt relief. You're selling influence, access to your Senate seat, the Castellane name, and connections. I looked at Dominic. And you're buying all of it. Not just a wife, but key to every door in Washington. Silence fell, broken only by the crackling fire in the adjacent fireplace. My father's face had gone red with anger or embarrassment, possibly both. But Dominic looked at me with something like approval. "Yes," he said simply. "That's exactly what I'm buying. Did you think this was just about respectability? I thought there might be limits to the transaction. There are no limits in business. Elena, only opportunities." He leaned back, studying me with those unreadable eyes. "But if it makes you feel better, I'll never ask you to do anything illegal or immoral. Just be my wife. Attend functions. Play your role. The rest, the political maneuvering, the networking, that happens whether you're involved or not." How reassuring. I picked up my wine glass, needing something to do with my hands. At least I know exactly what I'm worth. $12 million and a Senate committee seat. You're worth far more than that. Dominic's voice had dropped lower, almost intimate. But that's what your father's selling. What you're worth to me remains to be seen. The comment hung between us, layered with implications I wasn't ready to examine. My father cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "Perhaps we should discuss the wedding arrangements. 6 weeks isn't much time." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of logistics. The ceremony would be at the Castellane family church, followed by a reception at our estate. Guest list limited to 300 of the most influential people in Virginia and Washington. My father would handle the political invitations, Dominic the business connections. I would wear my mother's wedding dress, altered to fit, of course, since she'd been 4 inches taller and reed thin. I would carry white roses and promise to love, honor, and cherish. I would smile for photographs and dance with my new husband while everyone pretended this was a love match rather than a carefully orchestrated merger. After dinner, my father excused himself to take a phone call, leaving Dominic and me alone in the drawing room. The fire had burned lower, casting dancing shadows across the walls. I stood by the windows, staring out at gardens I could barely see in the darkness. "I have something for you." Dominic's voice came from behind me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. I turned to find him holding a small velvet box. My stomach dropped. "If that's an engagement ring, it's traditional." He opened the box, revealing a ring that stole my breath. An emerald-cut diamond, at least 5 carats, flanked by smaller stones that caught the firelight. It was stunning, ostentatious, exactly the kind of ring that would announce to the world that Elena Castellane had been claimed. "It's too much," I said, even as my fingers itched to touch it. "Nothing is too much for my future wife." Dominic removed the ring from its box, taking my left hand before I could protest. "May I?" I should have refused, should have insisted on choosing my own ring, or at least having some say in the symbol of my own engagement. Instead, I nodded mutely, watching as he slid the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Dominic Ashford didn't leave things to chance. "How did you know my size?" I asked. "I have my methods." His thumb traced the ring, then the finger wearing it, the touch sending unexpected electricity up my arm. "Do you like it?" The honest answer was yes. It was exactly the kind of ring I would have chosen. Elegant without being gaudy, classic with a modern edge. That he'd somehow intuited my taste made me deeply uncomfortable. "It's beautiful," I admitted, "but it doesn't change what this is." "No," Dominic agreed. "It doesn't." His hand still held mine, his thumb continuing those maddening circles on my skin. "But it does make it official. You're mine now, Elena, at least in the eyes of the world." The possessiveness in his tone should have angered me. Instead, it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear, and everything to do with something darker, more dangerous. I pulled my hand away, needing distance. "I should go. It's getting late." Dominic didn't argue, but his eyes tracked my movement with predatory focus. "I'll see you at the engagement party next week. My mother's friends have been planning it for years, apparently. They're thrilled I'm finally settling down." "Your mother's dead." "Yes." Something painful flickered across his face, there and gone in a heartbeat. "But her friends in the country club remain, and they've taken it upon themselves to manage my social life. Refuse them and face consequences more terrifying than any hostile takeover. the unexpected vulnerability, the glimpse of a man who still mourned his mother, who had relationships beyond business transactions, made him suddenly more human, more real, and far more dangerous to my carefully constructed emotional walls. Next week, then, I said, moving toward the door, "Elena!" His voice stopped me at the threshold. I looked back to find him silhouetted against the fire, powerful and alone in his beautiful, chaotic house. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being honest. For not pretending this is something it's not." He tilted his head, that almost smile playing at his lips. Most people in our world are so busy performing. They forget what truth looks like. "You're refreshing." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I simply nodded and left, following Mrs. Thornberry back through the museum-like halls to where my father waited by the car. The drive home was silent. My father made no mention of my outburst at dinner, and I didn't apologize. We both knew the truth now. All cards on the table. No pretense remaining about the nature of this arrangement. Back in my room, I stood before the mirror, studying the ring on my finger. It caught the light, throwing rainbow prisms across the walls. A beautiful cage, wrought in platinum and diamonds. In 6 weeks, I would marry Dominic Ashford, would move into that Gothic manor, and learn to navigate a world of modern art and old money, of business empires built on ruthlessness and political connections bought with campaign donations. I would become Mrs. Ashford, playing the role of devoted wife while maintaining careful emotional distance. No love, no sentiment, no risk of actual heartbreak. It should have felt like a death sentence. Instead, as I replayed the evening, Dominic's unsettling eyes, his dangerous smile, the electricity that sparked when he touched my hand, I felt something closer to anticipation. The wolf had claimed me. Now I would have to learn to run with the pack. Chapter 2. Performance Art. The engagement party was being held at the Ashford family's country club. Or rather, the country club the Ashfords had belonged to for 3 generations, back when Dominic's great-grandfather had made his first fortune in railroads and needed somewhere to spend it conspicuously. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, adjusting the silk dress my mother had sent over with a note. "Wear this. It photographs well." The dress was champagne-colored, fitted to the bodice before flowing into a skirt that ended just above my knees. Elegant, expensive, appropriately modest for an afternoon garden party. I looked exactly like what I was supposed to be, a senator's daughter, soon to be a billionaire's wife. The ring on my finger caught the light as I reached for my clutch. I'd barely taken it off since Dominic had placed it there a week ago, partly because it seemed to please my father when he noticed it, partly because I kept forgetting it was there, and partly, though I hated admitting this, because some perverse part of me liked how it looked, liked the weight of it, the statement it made. "You're mine now." Dominic's words echoed in my head as my father's car wound through the Virginia countryside toward the club. He called twice this week. Once to confirm I'd received the dress code information from Mrs. Thornberry, once to ask if I had any dietary restrictions of caterer. Both conversations had been brief, professional, devoid of anything personal. Yet I'd found myself replaying them at odd moments, analyzing his tone for subtext that probably wasn't there. "You're quiet," my father observed, his eyes on the road. "Just thinking. About whether I should have worn different shoes." The lie came easily. I couldn't very well tell him. I was thinking about the way Dominic's thumb had traced circles on my skin, or how his eyes had darkened when I challenged him at dinner. My father glanced at my heels, nude Louboutins that added 3 inches to my height. "They're fine. Everything is fine, Elena. You just need to smile, play the happy bride-to-be, and let Dominic handle the rest." "Let Dominic handle the rest," I repeated. Is that meant to be advice for today, or for the rest of my life? His jaw tightened. "Don't start." "I'm not starting anything. I'm simply clarifying expectations." I turned to look out the window, watching manicured estates roll past. "You want me to be decorative and compliant. Dominic wants me to be discreet and useful. Neither of you seems particularly interested in what I want. You agreed to this arrangement because you gave me no choice." The words hung between us, stark and honest. My father's hands flexed on the steering wheel, but he said nothing. What could he say? We both knew the truth. I was paying for his political ambitions with my freedom, and no amount of pretty dresses or expensive jewelry could change that fundamental fact. The country club appeared ahead, all white columns and emerald lawns, a temple to old money and older traditions. Cars lined the circular drive, Bentleys, Mercedes, the occasional vintage Rolls-Royce. The Virginia elite had turned out in force to inspect Dominic Ashford's surprising choice of bride. I'd never felt more like a specimen under glass. My father handed his keys to a valet, then offered me his arm. "Smile, Elena. This is supposed to be the happiest day of your life so far." I arranged my face into what I hoped passed for joy and let him lead me into club. The party was being held on the terrace overlooking the 18th hole, where white tents had been erected and round tables draped in champagne silk. Flowers erupted from every surface. White roses, peonies, hydrangeas, creating an effect that was both romantic and slightly overwhelming. And in the center of it all stood Dominic. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car, tailored so precisely it seemed painted on. His dark hair was styled back from his face, revealing the sharp angles of his features, those pale green eyes that found mine immediately despite the crowd between us. Something shifted in his expression when he saw me, not quite a smile, but a softening, recognition. He excused himself from the group of older men he'd been speaking with and crossed the terrace in long strides that parted the crowd like water. "Elena!" His voice was warm, intimate, pitched for my ears alone despite the dozens of people watching us. "You look stunning. You clean up well yourself." I was proud of how steady my voice sounded, how I managed to meet his gaze without flinching. Dominic's lips curved into that dangerous, almost smile. He took my hand, the one wearing his ring, and raised it to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent electricity racing up my arm. The gesture was perfectly proper, old-fashioned even, but the way his eyes held mine transformed it into something far more intimate. "Shall we?" He tucked my hand into the crook of his arm, and I had no choice but to move with him into the crowd. The next hour was a carefully choreographed performance. Dominic introduced me to what felt like half of Virginia, business associates, country club friends, his mother's former bridge partners who cooed over my ring and asked invasive questions about wedding plans or the entitlement of women who'd known him since childhood. Through it all, Dominic played the attentive fiancé to perfection. His hand remained at the small of my back, a warm, possessive presence. He laughed at my awkward jokes, finished my sentences when I faltered, and somehow made it seem like we'd known each other for years rather than days. It was unsettling how natural it felt, how easy to lean into him when his arms circled my waist, to return his smile with one that wasn't entirely fabricated. "You're good at this," I murmured during a brief moment of privacy, while he fetched us champagne. "At what?" "Pretending." I accepted the glass he offered, careful not to let our fingers touch. I was learning that Dominic's casual touches had a cumulative effect, building a kind of tension I wasn't prepared to examine. Anyone watching us would think we're actually in love. Anyone watching us would think exactly what we want them to think. He took a sip of his champagne, his eyes tracking someone over my shoulder. "That's the point of today." "Right. The performance. Is that what bothers you?" Dominic turned his attention back to me, and the intensity of his focus made me wish I'd kept my mouth shut. "That I'm good at performing? Isn't it what bothers you about everyone else?" He was quiet for a moment, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. "You remember that." "I remember everything you've said to me." The admission came out before I could stop it. Too honest, too revealing. Something heated in Dominic's eyes. He stepped closer, eliminating the careful distance I'd been maintaining. "Then you'll remember when I said you were refreshing. I meant it, Elena. You don't perform, or when you do it badly enough that I can see the real person underneath. And you like that?" I forced myself to hold my ground, even though every instinct screamed to retreat. "The fact that I'm a terrible actress? I like that you're honest, even when it would be easier to lie." His hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture tender in a way that made my breath catch. Especially then. "Dominic." A woman's voice cut through the moment. We both turned to find a striking brunette approaching, her cream dress and pearls marking her as one of the old money set. I can't believe you're actually getting married. I told Charlotte you'd die a bachelor. Mrs. Pemberton. Dominic's smile was polite but distant as he greeted the woman. May I introduce my fiancée, Elena Castellane? Elena, this is Mrs. Pemberton. She and my mother were dear friends. Oh, just call me Diane, darling. Mrs. Pemberton air-kissed both my cheeks, studying me with sharp blue eyes. Let me look at you. Yes, very pretty. Good bones. You'll photograph well, which is important for a man in Dominic's position. I blinked, caught off guard by the clinical assessment. Thank you. Diane. Dominic's voice held a warning note. Elena is my fiancée, not a breeding prospect you're evaluating. Don't be sensitive, darling. I'm simply saying she's suitable. Diane turned her attention back to me. Your father is Robert Castellane, yes? The senator? How did you two meet? Dominic's been so secretive about the whole thing. This was the moment we'd prepared for. The story we'd agreed upon during one of those brief, professional phone calls. I opened my mouth to deliver the fiction. We'd met at a charity gala, been instantly drawn to each other, began a whirlwind courtship, but Dominic spoke first. We met through business, he said smoothly. Elena's father and I had mutual interests. She attended a dinner meeting, and I was captivated. It wasn't the story we'd rehearsed. It was uncomfortably close to the truth, stripped of pretense and wrapped in just enough vagueness to satisfy curiosity without revealing the transactional nature of our arrangement. How romantic, Diane said, though her tone suggested she found it anything but business meeting. Well, I suppose that's very modern. In my day, we met at cotillions and summer parties. The world changes, Dominic said mildly. Excuse us, Diane. I should introduce Elena to the Wainwrights. He guided me away before she could respond, his hand firm at my back. Once we were out of earshot, I glanced up at him. That wasn't the story we agreed on. No, he didn't look at me, his gaze scanning the crowd. But it was more honest. People can smell a lie. Elena, better give them a truth they can't quite grasp in a fiction they'll pick apart. Before I could respond, we were swept into another round of introductions. The Wainwrights, the Harrisons, the Vandermeers, a parade of old Virginia names and older money. They assessed me with varying degrees of skepticism, clearly wondering what Dominic Ashford saw in a senator's daughter with no particular fortune of her own. If only they knew the truth, that what he saw was utility. A key to doors his money couldn't open alone. By the time we sat down for lunch, my face hurt from smiling. I was seated at the head table between Dominic and a hedge fund manager named Carter something or other, who kept asking pointed questions about whether I planned to continue my graduate studies after the wedding. I'm finishing my master's in art history, I explained, stabbing at my salmon with more force than necessary. I only have my thesis left. Art history? Carter's tone made it clear what he thought of that pursuit. And what will you do with that degree? Teach, maybe, or work for a museum, or a gallery, or nothing, because apparently my new role was professional wife. But I was about to admit that to this condescending ass. Dominic, you're marrying a woman with a career. How progressive. Carter turned his attention to my fiancée, who'd been quietly eating while I'd been interrogated, though I suppose she'll give that up once children come along. I felt Dominic stiffen beside me, his fork lowered with deliberate precision. Elena's career is her own decision, he said, his voice pleasant but edged with steel. As are any choices regarding our future family. I'm marrying a partner, Carter, not acquiring another asset to manage. The rebuke was subtle but unmistakable. Carter's face reddened. Of course. I didn't mean to imply. I'm sure you didn't. Dominic's smile didn't reach his eyes. He turned to me, his expression softening. Your thesis is on the intersection of contemporary art and classical architecture, correct? Surprise rendered me momentarily speechless. We'd never discussed my studies. Yes. How did you? You mentioned it was why you were interested in the Rothko in my entrance hall. The juxtaposition of modern chaos against historical order. His hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. I've been thinking about your observation. You were right. The contrast is the point. Destruction and creation occupying the same space. He'd remembered, not just that I'd commented on his art collection, but the specific observation I'd made in passing while navigating his Gothic manor. More than that, he'd thought about it, engaged with the idea. It shouldn't have mattered. This was a business arrangement. His interest in my academic work didn't change the fundamental nature of our relationship, but it did matter. Against all logic and self-preservation, it mattered. I'd like to read your thesis, Dominic continued. When it's finished, if you're willing to share it. You'd be bored to tears, I protested. It's very technical. Try me. His thumb traced circles on my palm, hidden from view beneath the table. I might surprise you. Carter cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with being excluded from the conversation. Well, this is lovely. Young love and shared interests. Congratulations again on the engagement. The rest of lunch passed in a blur. I was hyper-aware of Dominic beside me, the warmth of his hand still holding mine, the occasional brush of his shoulder against mine, the way he leaned in to whisper observations that made me laugh despite myself. This was supposed to be a performance, a carefully constructed fiction for public consumption. So, why did it feel increasingly real? After lunch, as guests mingled on the terrace and a string quartet played Vivaldi, Dominic pulled me aside to a quiet corner of the garden. Rose bushes bloomed around us, their fragrance heavy in the September air. You looked like you needed a break, he said, finally releasing my hand. I immediately missed the contact, which was alarming. That obvious? To me. He leaned against a stone wall, studying me with those unreadable eyes. You've been performing all afternoon, smiling at people who are dissecting your every word, enduring invasive questions about our wedding night and future children. It's fine. I knew what I was signing up for. Did you? Dominic's voice was soft but penetrating. Because I'm not sure I did. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he finally spoke, his words were careful, measured. This arrangement was supposed to be simple, mutually beneficial, no complications. And you're making it complicated. He looked at me then, something raw in his expression. You're not supposed to be smart and funny and interesting. You're supposed to be decorative and compliant, like your father said. The admission startled a laugh from me. Sorry to disappoint. You're not disappointing. Dominic pushed off the wall, moving closer. That's the problem. You're exceeding expectations in ways I didn't anticipate. My heart hammered against my ribs. Dominic. I told myself this would be easy. A transaction. You play your role, I play mine, we both get what we want. His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. But then you challenged me at dinner. Remember my comment about art. Look at me like you can see past the reputation to whoever I am underneath. Who are you underneath? The question escaped before I could stop it. I don't know. His voice was rough, honest in a way I hadn't heard from him before. I've been playing the role of the ruthless billionaire for so long, I'm not sure where performance ends and the reality begins. The vulnerability in that admission stole my breath. This was the man beneath the wolf's clothing. Uncertain, searching, maybe just as trapped as I was. Then maybe we're both pretending, I said softly, both playing roles we never auditioned for. Maybe. His eyes searched mine, looking for something I wasn't sure I could give him. The question is, what happens when we stop pretending? When the masks come off? I don't know. Neither do I. He dropped his hand, stepping back to restore the distance between us. But I think we're going to find out. Before I could respond, voices drifted from the terrace. Guests looking for us, probably wondering where the happy couple had disappeared to. Dominic offered his arm, and I took it, allowing him to lead me back into performance. But something had shifted between us in that quiet garden corner. A crack in the facade, a glimpse of truth beneath the careful construction. The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of champagne toasts and congratulations. My father gave a speech about family and tradition that made my stomach turn. Dominic's response was thankfully brief. thanking everyone for coming and expressing his happiness at finding such an exceptional partner. The word partner seemed to carry extra weight, and I wonder if I was the only one who noticed. As the sun began to set and guests started to depart, I found myself alone on the terrace, watching the light fade over the 18th hole. The party had been a success by any objective measure. No scandals, no awkward revelations, just the appearance of a happy couple embarking on their future together. Tired, Dominic appeared beside me, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. He offered one, and I accepted gratefully. Exhausted. How do you do this all the time? Practice, and a healthy contempt for most people's opinions. He took a sip, his profile sharp against the dying light. You did well today. So did you. Very convincing. Was I? He turned to face me, and the intensity in his gaze made me catch my breath. Because I'm not sure how much was convincing and how much was just truth. Dominic. I know, this is supposed to be simple. A transaction. He set his glass down on the terrace railing, then took mine and did the same. But here's what I'm learning. Elena, nothing about you is simple. He stepped closer, and I should have retreated, should have maintained a careful distance that kept this arrangement safely transactional. Instead, I held my ground. I'm exactly what you paid for, I said, hating how my voice wavered. A senator's daughter with the right connections and a willingness to play her part. No. His hand came up to trace my jawline, the touch feather-light but electric. You're so much more than that, and that's what terrifies me. Why? Because I don't do complicated. Don't do feelings or connections beyond the transactional. I built my entire life around control and predictability. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, and I felt the touch everywhere. Then you walk into my home with your honest eyes and sharp tongue, and suddenly nothing is predictable anymore. We barely know each other. I know. His forehead touched mine, and we stood there breathing the same air. We barely know each other, yet I find myself thinking about you at odd moments. Want to know what you're reading, what you think about my art collection, whether you actually like the ring I chose, or if you're just being polite. I like the ring, I whispered. I hate that I like it, but I do. Dominic's laugh was soft, almost relieved. Good, because I spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing it. How much time? 4 hours with 3 different jewelers. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. I told myself I was being thorough, making sure the investment was sound. But the truth? I wanted it to be perfect. Wanted you to look at it and see something beautiful, even if the circumstances of receiving it weren't. My heart clenched at the admission. This man, this ruthless, calculating billionaire, had spent 4 hours choosing my ring because he wanted me to like it, not as a trophy or a symbol of ownership, but as something beautiful. Dominic, I breathed, not sure what I was asking for, but he seemed to understand anyway. His hand slid to the back of my neck, drawing me closer, and his lips brushed mine, tentative, questioning. A kiss that was nothing like the possessive claiming I'd expected. Instead, it was gentle, almost reverent, tasting of champagne and possibility. I should have pulled away, should have reminded us both that this was a transaction, not a romance. That kisses would lead to complications we'd specifically agreed to avoid. Instead, I kissed him back. My hands found the lapels of his suit, pulling him closer. Dominic made a low sound in his throat and deepened the kiss, his control slipping enough that I could feel the warmth beneath his careful restraint. His other arm wrapped around my waist, holding me against him, and for a moment we weren't performing for anyone. This was just us. 2 people who'd agreed to a business arrangement, discovering chemistry they hadn't anticipated. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against mine again. We should stop, he murmured. We should. Neither of us moved. This wasn't supposed to happen, he continued, his voice rough. No, it wasn't. I don't know what to do with this. I laughed softly, honestly. Neither do I. We stood there in the gathering darkness, holding each other, both of us understanding that something had shifted irrevocably. The simple transaction we'd agreed to was becoming something else, something neither of us knew how to navigate. Finally, reluctantly, Dominic stepped back, His hand lingered on my face for a moment before dropping away entirely. "I should take you home," he said. "Yes." But as he led me to his car, a vintage Aston Martin in midnight blue that probably cost more than my education, and opened the door with old-fashioned courtesy, I realized I didn't want to go home. Didn't want this day to end in reality, to rush back in. The drive to my family's estate was quiet, the silence comfortable rather than awkward. Dominic's hand rested on the gear shift, close enough to mine that our fingers occasionally brushed. Each touch sent sparks through my system. When we pulled up to my house, he shut off the engine and turned to face me. "About what happened," he began. "We don't have to analyze it," I interrupted. "We both know this is complicated now. We can either fight it or see where it goes. And which do you want to do?" I looked at him, this man who'd bought a marriage but was offering something that felt dangerously close to real. "I don't know. Ask me again in 6 weeks. Dominic's lips curved into that dangerous smile. "I will." He walked me to my door, his hand at the small of my back, and kissed me again, brief but promising. Then he was gone, the Aston Martin's engine purring into the night. I stood on the front steps long after his taillights disappeared, touching my lips and wondering what I had just started. Inside, my father looked up from his paperwork. "How was the party?" "Perfect," I said automatically. Everything went according to plan. But as I climbed the stairs to my room, I knew that was a lie. Nothing had gone according to plan. The simple transaction had become complicated. The performance had turned real, and the marriage I'd agreed to for all the wrong reasons was beginning to feel like it might be right. Or completely, catastrophically wrong. I wouldn't know until it was too late to back out. Chapter 3. Cracks in the Armor. The wedding invitations arrived 3 days after the engagement party. Heavy cream cardstock with engraved lettering that announced the union of Elena Marie Castellane and Dominic James Ashford. I stared at my name paired with his, the reality of what was coming settling over me like a weighted blanket. 5 weeks until I became Mrs. Ashford. 5 weeks until I moved into that Gothic manor and learned to live with a man who kissed me like he meant it, but treated our arrangement like a business deal in every other context. My phone buzzed with a text from Dominic. "Dinner tonight? Need to discuss wedding logistics." Always business with him. Even after that kiss on the terrace. Kisses plural, because I couldn't stop thinking about how he'd pull me back for a second one at my door. He'd reverted professional distance. Our few conversations since the party had been brief, focused on guest lists and seating arrangements, and whether we wanted a string quartet or a jazz band for the reception. Never about what had shifted between us in that rose garden. I typed back, "What time?" 7. "I'll pick you up." No question about whether I had other plans, whether dinner was convenient. Just an assumption that I'd rearrange my life to accommodate his schedule. The old Elena would have bristled at the presumption. The new Elena, the one who'd felt his control slip when he'd kissed her, found herself wondering if a commanding tone extended to other areas of his life. The thought sent heat flooding through me, which was deeply inconvenient. I spent the afternoon trying to focus on my thesis, a comparative analysis of Rothko's color-field paintings against Baroque cathedral architecture. The juxtaposition of spiritual minimalism versus ornate religious excess should have been fascinating. Instead, I kept thinking about Dominic's comment at the engagement party, how he'd not only remember my thesis topic, but engage with it intellectually. Most of the men I'd dated, the sons of senators and CEOs my father had paraded through our home, had treated my academic interests as a quirk to be tolerated, something I'd outgrow once I settled into my proper role as wife and mother. Dominic, by contrast, had asked to read my work, had spent 4 hours choosing my engagement ring because he wanted me to like it. Small gestures that shouldn't have mattered, but did. At 6:30, I changed into a black dress that struck the balance between elegant and understated. Dominic hadn't specified where we were dining, but I'd learned he preferred upscale establishments where privacy could be purchased and business conducted without interruption. He arrived precisely at 7, the Aston Martin's headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. I watched from my bedroom window as he emerged from the car, powerful and controlled in dark trousers and a charcoal shirt. Even from this distance, I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he moved like violence contained in an expensive suit. My father intercepted me at the bottom of the stairs. "You're seeing Dominic again." We have wedding details to discuss. Elena! He caught my arm, his expression troubled. Be careful. I frowned. Careful of what? You're the one who arranged this marriage. I arranged a mutually beneficial business merger. But I see the way you look at him now and the way he looks at you. His grip tightened. Don't confuse chemistry for something deeper. Men like Dominic Ashford don't change. They consume. Is that concern for me, or worry that I might complicate your political arrangement? The words came out sharper than intended, but I was tired of my father's selective care. He'd sold me to solve his problems, then had the audacity to warn me about the buyer. Both, he admitted with unexpected honesty. I need this alliance, but you're still my daughter. I don't want to see you hurt. Then you should have made me marry a stranger. I pulled free of his grip and headed for the door before he could respond. Dominic leaned against his car, arms crossed, watching me approach with an intensity that made my steps falter. The dying light caught the angles of his face, all shadows and sharp edges. Beautiful in the way broken glass was beautiful. Stunning and dangerous in equal measure. Elena! My name in his voice sent shivers down my spine. He straightened, opening the passenger door. You look stunning. You said that last time. It was true then, still true now. His hand found the small of my back as I slid into the car. That possessive touch I was learning to anticipate. How was your week? Busy. Yours? Complicated. He shut my door and rounded the driver's side, his movements fluid despite their controlled precision. The car purred to life, and we pulled away from my family's estate. Complicated how? I asked, watching his profile in the dashboard lights. Merger negotiations that are taking longer than anticipated. Board members questioning my judgment. His jaw tightened. The usual corporate warfare. Questioning your judgment about the merger or about getting married? Dominic glanced at me, something like approval in his eyes. Perceptive. Both, actually. They think I'm distracted, losing my edge. Are you? Yes. The admission came without hesitation, but not for the reasons they think. My heart rate kicked up. What reasons do they think? That I'm playing house. That marriage will soften me, make me less willing to make hard decisions. He shifted gears, the car responding to his touch with precision. They're wrong. Marriage won't change who I am or what I'm capable of. Then why are you distracted? Silence stretched between us, broken only by the engine's purr and the whispered tires on asphalt. When Dominic finally spoke, his voice was low, almost reluctant. Because I keep thinking about you, about how you looked at my garden, about how you kissed me back when you should have pushed me away. He pulled onto a private road I didn't recognize, trees closed in on either side. About how this arrangement was supposed to be simple, and you've made it anything but. Where are we going? I asked, needing to change the subject before I did something foolish, like admit I've been thinking about him too. Constantly. Obsessively. My place. I thought we'd have more privacy there. Your place. I repeated, alarm and something darker, anticipation, flooding through me. Dominic. To discuss wedding logistics, he interrupted, though the corner of his mouth quirked. I promised to behave. Elena, unless you don't want me to. The suggestion hung between us, weighted with possibility. I should have demanded he take me to a restaurant, somewhere public and safe. Instead, I said nothing, watching the Gothic manor materialize through the trees like something from a dark fairy tale. Mrs. Thornberry greeted us at the door, her expression as impassive as ever. Good evening, Miss Castellane, Mr. Ashford. Dinner prepared in the small dining room. Thank you, Mrs. Thornberry. That will be all for tonight. Dominic's dismissal was gentle but firm. The older woman nodded and disappeared into the house's interior, leaving us alone. The small dining room was anything but small, just smaller than the formal dining hall I'd seen on my first visit. A table was set for two, intimate despite the room's grandeur. Candles flickered in silver holders, casting dancing shadows on walls covered in more of Dominic's contemporary art collection. This is romantic, I observed, letting him pull out my chair. For a business discussion, I contain multitudes. Dominic took his seat across from me, near enough that our knees almost touched. Wine, please. He poured a red that probably cost more than my monthly rent, the liquid catching the candlelight as it filled my glass. I took a sip, rich, complex, exactly the kind of wine someone with Dominic's taste would choose. So, I said, setting down my glass, wedding logistics. Yes. But he made no move to discuss anything, just studied me with those unsettling pale eyes. You cut your hair. I touched the end self-consciously. I'd trimmed 2 inches that afternoon, needing to do something with the nervous energy that had been building since the engagement party. Just a trim. How did you notice? I notice everything about you. The words were matter-of-fact, delivered without pretense or manipulation. Somehow, that made them more devastating. The way you bite your lower lip when you're thinking. How you arrange your fork and knife parallel on your plate when you're done eating. That you prefer white wine, but accept red without complaint because you think it's more sophisticated. I stared at him, unnerved by his attention to detail. That's unsettling. Is it? Dominic leaned back, swirling his wine. I find it fascinating. You're a study in contradictions. Elena, dutiful daughter who challenges authority. Woman who agreed to a loveless marriage, but kisses like she means it. Heat flooded my face. We agreed not to analyze what happened. No, you said we shouldn't analyze it. I never agreed. His eyes glinted in the candlelight. Tell me something. Elena, why did you kiss me back? Because you're attractive and it had been a long day. The lie tasted bitter. Chemistry, that's all. Meaningless. Liar. But he said it softly, almost fondly. You felt it too. That shift, whatever this arrangement was supposed to be, it's becoming something else. It can't. I gripped my wine glass too tight, the stem threatening to snap. We agreed. Simple transaction. Mutual benefit. No complications. Too late. Dominic set down his glass and leaned forward, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. It's already complicated, Elena. The question is what we do about it. Before I could respond, Mrs. Thornberry returned with the first course, some delicate fish preparation that probably took hours to create. We ate in charged silence, the weight of unspoken words pressing down like a physical presence. Tell me about your family, I said finally, desperate to shift to safer ground. Your mother, the friends who planned the engagement party. Dominic's expression shuddered. What about her? You said she died when you were 15. That must have been difficult. It was. He cut into his fish with surgical precision. Cancer. Ovarian. By the time they caught it, it was stage 4. She lasted 6 months. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. But the tension in his jaw suggested otherwise. She was the one who taught me about art. Used to drag me to museums when I was a kid, make me stand in front of paintings for hours until I could articulate what I saw beyond color and shape. The image of a young Dominic being schooled in aesthetic appreciation by his mother softened something in my chest. Is that why you collect contemporary pieces? Because she preferred them? She preferred anything that challenged convention. Said the old masters were too concerned with perfection, that real art should be messy and uncomfortable and honest. His lips curved into a small smile. She would have liked you. You barely know me. I know enough. Dominic's gaze held mine. You're messy and uncomfortable and honest in all the ways that matter. That doesn't sound like a compliment. It's the highest compliment I can give. He paused as Mrs. Thornberry cleared our plates and served the next course. Once we were alone again, he continued. My mother understood that perfection is boring, that the interesting people are the ones with cracks in their armor, the ones who've been broken and put themselves back together imperfectly. And you think I'm broken? The question came out more vulnerable than intended. I think you're a woman trapped by expectations you never agreed to, doing what she thinks is right while dying a little inside every day. His voice was gentle but ruthless in its honesty. I recognize it because I've lived it. The difference is, I burned my expectations to the ground and built something new from the ashes. You're still trying to be good. The observation cut deeper than any insult could have. Maybe I want to be good. Why? What has being good ever gotten you? Dominic leaned forward again, intensity radiating from him. A father who sold you to solve your problems? A future where you play the perfect wife to a man you barely know? That's not goodness. Elena, that's self-sacrifice disguised as virtue. You don't understand. Don't I? He laughed, the sound bitter. I spent the first 20 years of my life being who everyone wanted me to be. The perfect son, the Ivy League student, the heir to the family business. Then my father died, and I realized I'd wasted 2 decades living someone else's life. So I stopped being good and started being honest. And look where that got you. Rich and powerful and completely alone. The words hung between us, cruel and accurate. Dominic's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or pain. Yes, he said quietly. Rich and powerful and alone. Until a month ago when a senator's daughter walked into my home and agreed to marry me for all the wrong reasons. And now, my heart hammered against my ribs. Now I'm still rich and powerful. But I'm not sure about the alone part anymore. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. You're right, Elena. I am alone. By choice, by design. Because it's easier than risking connection with someone who might see past the reputation to whoever I actually am. But then you show up with your honest eyes and sharp tongue, refusing to pretend you're anything other than trapped. And suddenly alone feels less like safety and more like cowardice. I stared at our joined hands, his palm warm against my skin. This is a terrible idea. The worst, he agreed. We're supposed to keep this simple. Transactional. I know. So, why are we sitting here having this conversation? Dominic's thumb traced circles on my wrist, the touch sending electricity up my arm. Because simple stopped being an option the moment I kissed you. Because every logical reason to maintain distance feels less important than wanting to know what you're thinking right now. I'm thinking this is moving too fast. That I barely know you. That in 5 weeks I'm supposed to marry you and spend the rest of my life pretending we have a real marriage when we both know it's a business arrangement. I pulled my hand away, needing space to think. I'm terrified of what happens if we blur these lines. If we confuse chemistry for something real, and then wake up one day to realize we're strangers who share a last name and nothing else. All valid concerns. Dominic sat back, giving me room. But here's what I'm thinking. We're already pretending. Pretending we don't feel this pull between us. Pretending those kisses didn't mean anything. Pretending we can maintain emotional distance while living in the same house and sharing the same bed. My breath caught. We haven't discussed sleeping arrangements. No, we haven't. His eyes darkened. But we're going to have to eventually. The world expects us to have a real marriage. Elena, that means sharing a bedroom. At minimum for appearances. What happens behind closed doors is between us, but we need to decide what that looks like. Heat flooded through me at the implication. I'd known, logically, that marriage to Dominic would involve physical intimacy at some point. He'd mentioned wanting children, after all, but hearing him discuss it so matter-of-factly, seeing the hunger in his eyes that suggested he thought about this as much as I had, it made everything feel suddenly, dangerously real. I stopped, mortified at what I'd almost admitted. Dominic went very still. You haven't what? Nothing. Forget I said anything. Elena, he said my name like a command. Finish that sentence. I looked away, face burning. I haven't been with anyone. Not completely. The silence that followed was excruciating. When I finally forced myself to meet Dominic's gaze, his expression was unreadable. You're a virgin. Not a question. Yes. Is that a problem? No. The word came out rough, almost strained. But it changes things. How? Dominic stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His hands gripped the sill, knuckles white with tension. Because I planned to seduce you slowly. Take my time. Learn what you liked. He turned, and the raw one in his eyes stole my breath. But knowing you've never, that I'd be your first. Christ, Elena, you can't look at me like that and expect me to maintain distance. How am I looking at you? Like you want me as much as I want you. Like you're thinking about what would be like between us. He crossed back to me in 3 long strides, hauling me to my feet. Are you? Thinking about it. I should have lied. Should have maintained the pretense of professional distance. Instead, I said, yes. Dominic's control shattered. His mouth crashed into mine, not gentle like before, but demanding, consuming. I gasped against his lips, and he took advantage, his tongue sweeping into my mouth with devastating skill. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and he made a sound low in his throat that sent heat pooling in my core. This was nothing like our previous kisses. This was hunger unleashed, want without careful restraint. His hands mapped my body, waist, hips, the curve of my spine, each touch possessive and claiming. I arched into him, craving more, craving everything. Elena, he breathed against my neck, his lips trailing fire across my skin. Tell me to stop. No, I should stop. Don't. My hands found his hair, tangling in the dark strands. Don't stop, Dominic. Please. He groaned and lifted me, setting me on the edge of the table. His hands pushed up the hem of my dress, fingers skimming my thighs, and I shivered at the contact. Every nerve ending felt electrified, alive in ways I'd never experienced. You're killing me, he muttered, his forehead pressed to mine. 5 more weeks. I have to wait 5 more weeks. Why? The word came out breathy, desperate. Because your first time shouldn't be on a dining table. Because you deserve romance and care, not me losing control. He stepped back, hands falling away, leaving me cold despite the heat still coursing through my veins. Because if I take you now, there's no going back. No pretending this is just business. Reality crashed back in, harsh and unwelcome. I slid off the table, smoothing down my dress with shaking hands. You're right. We shouldn't have. Don't. Dominic caught my face in his hands, forcing me to meet his eyes. Don't regret this. Don't retreat into politeness and pretend you didn't kiss me back with everything you had. What do you want from me? The question came out raw, honest. You say this is complicated, that we can't maintain distance, but you won't tell me what you actually want. Is this just sex to you? Physical attraction you're trying to justify? Or is it something more? Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones. When he spoke, his voice was low, almost vulnerable. I don't know what this is. I've never felt anything like it before. His eyes searched mine. All I know is that I want you. Not just physically, though God knows that's part of it. I want to know what makes you laugh, what you dream about, what you look like first thing in the morning with sleep still in your eyes. I want to read your thesis and argue with you about art. I want to hear you challenge me at dinner and see you wear my ring like you mean it. My heart clenched at the admission. Dominic, I know it's too fast. I know we barely know each other. But I also know that waiting 5 more weeks to touch you, to really touch you, is going to be the longest 5 weeks of my life. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, chaste compared to what had just happened. So here's what I propose. We spend these next 5 weeks actually getting to know each other. No more pretending this is just business. We date properly. And on our wedding night, his voice dropped to a rasp. On our wedding night, I'm going to make love to you until you forget your own name, until the only thing you remember is mine. Heat flooded through me at the promise, the certainty in his voice, the raw want barely contained. It should have frightened me. Instead, it made me want to close the distance between us and finish what we'd started. And if we realize we made a mistake, I asked, if we get to know each other and discover this chemistry is all we have, then we'll deal with it. Dominic's expression was resolute, but I'd rather take that risk than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if we'd been honest about what we wanted, which is each other. Simple, direct, true. I want you, Elena, not just the senator's daughter or the art history scholar or the woman who looks perfect on my arm at functions. I want you messy and complicated and honest. The question is, do you want me? Did I? This man who bought a marriage but was offering something that felt dangerously close to real? This ruthless billionaire who kissed me like I was precious and looked at me like he could see past every wall I'd ever built? Yes, I whispered. God help me, yes. Dominic's smile was devastating, genuine and warm and tinged with relief. He pulled me close, tucking my head under his chin, and for a moment we just stood there, holding each other. 5 weeks, he murmured against my hair. We have 5 weeks to figure out what this is, to decide if we're brave enough to make this real. And if we're not, then we go through with the wedding anyway and spend the rest of our lives regretting it. His arms tightened around me. But I don't think we will. Regret it? I think we're going to surprise ourselves. I wanted to believe him, wanted to think that a marriage born from desperation and debt could transform into something genuine. But as I stood in his arms, breathing in his scent and feeling his heartbeat against my cheek, I couldn't shake the fear that we were making a terrible mistake. That chemistry wasn't enough to build a life on. That 5 weeks wasn't enough time to truly know someone. That I was setting myself up for heartbreak by wanting something more from a man who'd made his fortune by seeing people as assets to acquire. But when Dominic tilted my face up and kissed me again, slow and sweet and full of promise, I decided that maybe some mistakes were worth making. Maybe love wasn't always logical or sensible or carefully planned. Maybe sometimes it was just two broken people deciding to be honest with each other and see what happened next. Chapter 4, Learning to Fall. The first date happened 3 days later. Dominic picked me up at noon on Saturday in a different car, a Range Rover this time, more practical than the Aston Martin. He wore jeans and a charcoal Henley that clung to his frame in ways that made concentration difficult. I'd never seen him in anything but business attire, and the casual look made him seem younger, more approachable, almost normal. "Where are we going?" I asked as he opened the passenger door. "You'll see." That infuriating, almost smile played at his lips. Trust me. Trust. Such a loaded word between two people who'd agreed to marry for convenience. But I climbed in anyway, watching Virginia countryside roll past as he drove with confident ease. We ended up at a small airport outside Richmond. Private, of course. Dominic Ashford didn't do commercial flights. A sleek jet waited on the tarmac, white with dark blue striping. "You're kidnapping me," I observed as he guided me toward the plane. "Only for the day. I promise to return you by dinner." He helped me up the stairs, his hand warm at my back. "Unless you'd rather go back?" I should have demanded answers, insisted on knowing the plan before agreeing to fly off with him to God knows where. Instead, I settled into the leather seat and accepted the champagne the flight attendant offered. "To first dates," Dominic said, raising his glass. "This is excessive for a first date. I'm an excessive person." He took a sip, eyes glinting with amusement. "Besides, I want to do something you couldn't research ahead of time. Something spontaneous. I hate surprises. I know. You like control, predictability, knowing exactly what expected." His gaze turned intent. "But sometimes the best things happen when we give up control, when we let ourselves be surprised." The subtext wasn't subtle. He crept up my neck as I remembered being pressed against him 3 nights ago, my careful control shattered by his touch. I'd replayed that moment 1,000 times, the taste of his mouth, the strength in his hands, the way he looked at me like I was something he desperately wanted. "Where are we going?" I asked, needing to change the subject. "New York. There's a gallery opening tonight that I think you'll appreciate." My heart skipped. The Rothko retrospective at the Guggenheim? That's been sold out for months. Not when you're a major donor. Dominic's smile was pure satisfaction. "I remembered you mentioned wanting to see it during one of our phone calls. Thought it might be relevant to your thesis." I stared at him, stunned. We'd had that conversation for maybe 3 minutes while discussing wedding music. I'd mentioned it in passing, not expecting him to remember or care. "You arranged a trip to New York based on a casual comment I made?" "Yes." He said it simply, as if flying someone to another city for a museum visit was perfectly normal. "Is that a problem?" "No, it's just—" I struggled to articulate what I was feeling. Most men I've dated barely remember my name, let alone obscure references to 20th century art movements. "Then you've been dating the wrong man." Dominic leaned closer, voice dropping. I pay attention, Elena, especially to things that matter to you. The flight was mercifully short, just under 2 hours. We spent it talking, really talking, in a way we hadn't before. Dominic told me about growing up in Virginia, about summers spent at the country club learning golf and proper etiquette, about his mother's illness and how it had changed everything. I was angry, he admitted, staring out the window at cloud below. So angry that she was dying and I couldn't stop it, that all my father's money couldn't buy her more time. I think that's when I realized that power, real power, wasn't about wealth or connections. It was about control, about bending the world to your will through sheer force of determination. That sounds exhausting. It is. His laugh was rueful, but it's also effective. After she died, I promised myself I'd never be helpless again, never be in a position where something I cared about could be taken away. Is that why you don't let people close? Because you're afraid of losing them? Dominic turned from the window, his gaze penetrating. Probably. My therapist would have a field day with that analysis. You have a therapist? Had. For a few years after my father died. He shrugged. She said I had intimacy issues stemming from unresolved grief and a pathological need for control. I said she had a degree from a mediocre state school and a tendency to state the obvious. We parted ways. Despite myself, I laughed. You're terrible. I know. But he was smiling, and something about seeing him relaxed, actually enjoy himself, made my chest tight. What about you? What's your excuse for keeping people at arm's length? I don't. I stopped at his raised eyebrow. Fine. Maybe I do. But can you blame me? My mother died when I was 8. My father's been more interested in his political career than his daughter. The relationships I've had were either with men who wanted my family's connections or men who saw me as a trophy. It's easier to not expect anything real. And now I'm engaged to a man who bought a marriage because he's too damaged for real relationships. The words came out harsh and intended, but I was tired of pretending. We're both broken, Dominic. Maybe that's why this feels so inevitable. Two people who don't know how to be vulnerable, deciding it's safer to marry someone who won't expect emotional honesty. Is that what you think this is? His voice was quiet, almost hurt. Two damaged people settling for safety? Isn't it? Dominic was silent for a long moment. Then he reached across the space between our seats and took my hand, his thumb tracing familiar circles on my wrist. Maybe it started that way, he said finally, but that's not what this is anymore. At least, not for me. Before I could respond, the pilot announced our descent into Teterboro. The moment passed, but the conversation lingered between us. Unfinished, waited with implications neither of us was ready to examine fully. A car waited at the airport, another Range Rover, this one black, and a driver who clearly knew Dominic well enough to simply nod in greeting without attempting conversation. We drove into Manhattan, and I watched the city materialize around us, all steel and glass and frenetic energy. When was the last time you were here? Dominic asked. College. A semester abroad junior year, studying European art history at the Met. I smiled at the memory. I lived in a tiny apartment in the East Village, survived on dollar pizza and ambition. Did you love it? Yes, and hated it. The noise, the crowds, the constant movement. It was overwhelming and exhilarating in equal measure. I glanced at him. You have an apartment here, don't you? Penthouse, Upper East Side. He named an address that made my eyebrows rise. One of the most exclusive buildings in Manhattan, where apartments sold for tens of millions. We'll stay there tonight, if you're comfortable with that. Separate bedrooms, he added quickly, though we could make it back to Virginia, if you prefer. The offer to stay felt momentous, somehow, like accepting would be crossing a line, moving from dating to something more intimate. Not physically, he'd promised separate rooms, but emotionally, sharing his space, seeing how he lived when he wasn't performing the role of ruthless billionaire. I didn't bring anything to wear. Taken care of. At my look, he elaborated. I had my assistant arrange for some things to be delivered to the apartment. Your size, appropriate for the gallery opening and tomorrow. If anything doesn't fit, or isn't to your taste, we can go shopping. Part of me bristled at the presumption that I'd say yes, that he could anticipate my needs and fulfill them without asking. But another part, the part that was tired of fighting every gesture of care as if it were a threat, decided to just accept the thoughtfulness. Okay, I said, we'll stay. Dominic's smile was worth surrendering control. The penthouse was everything I'd expected and nothing I'd anticipated. Yes, it was luxurious, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic city views, designer furniture that probably cost more than my education, art covering every available wall space. But it was also lived in a way his Virginia manor wasn't. Books piled on side tables, a laptop left open on the kitchen counter, a coffee mug in the sink with lipstick stains on the rim. I picked up the mug without thinking, studying the red imprint. You have company here recently? Dominic glanced over, then laughed. That's from 3 months ago. I'm terrible about dishes. He took it from me, rinsing it in the sink. And before you ask, yes, I've had women here. No, none of them meant anything. And no, none of them have been here since we got engaged. I wasn't going to ask. Liar. But he said it fondly. Come on, I'll show you your room. The guest suite was larger than my entire apartment near campus, with its own bathroom and a walk-in closet where several garment bags already hung. I unzipped one to find a dress that stole my breath, deep burgundy silk that would drape like water, elegant without being ostentatious. How did you know my size? I asked, running my hand over the fabric. I pay attention. Dominic leaned against the doorframe, watching me, and I may have asked your father's housekeeper. Discreetly, you're either very thoughtful or very controlling. I haven't decided which. Can I be both? His smile was self-aware. I like taking care of the people He stopped, seeming to catch himself. The people in my life. It's how I show affection when I'm not good at saying the actual words. The admission made something crack open in my chest. What words aren't you good at saying? Dominic pushed off the doorframe, moving into the room until he stood close enough to touch. His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone with aching gentleness. That I think about you constantly. That I rearrange meetings and cancel plans just for the possibility of seeing you. That when I wake up at 3 a.m, you're the first thing on my mind. His eyes search mine. That I'm terrified of what I'm feeling, because I don't know how to feel it properly, how to care about someone without trying to control every variable. Dominic, my voice broke on his name. You asked what words I'm not good at saying. He leaned closer, his forehead touching mine. I'm not good at saying I'm falling for you. Elena, that this stopped being about business or convenience or solving problems the moment you challenged me at dinner. Maybe even before that. Maybe the moment I saw your application photo and thought, she looks sad. I wonder why. Tears pricked my eyes. That's a lot of words you're supposedly not good at. I'm good at saying them to you. Only to you. He kissed my forehead, then stepped back. Get ready. The gallery opens at 7, and I want to get there early so we can actually see the art before it gets too crowded. He left me standing in the guest room, reeling from his confession. I'm falling for you. The words echoed in my head, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, because the truth I'd been avoiding acknowledging, was that I was falling too, had been falling since he'd spent 4 hours choosing my ring, since he'd remembered my thesis topic, since he looked at me like I was something more than a means to an end. We were both falling. Two people who didn't know how to trust learning to risk it anyway. The question was whether we'd catch each other or crash. The Guggenheim was magnificent. Frank Lloyd Wright's architectural masterpiece, spiraling upward in clean white curves. We arrived just as the doors opened, and Dominic guided me through the building with a hand at my back, that now familiar possessive touch I'd come to anticipate. The Rothko retrospective occupied the entire spiral, each painting given space to breathe. I stood before a massive canvas, deep reds and oranges bleeding into each other, and felt something shift in my chest. This was why I'd chosen our history. This moment of standing before human emotion rendered in color and shape, feeling the artist's soul reaching across decades to touch mine. Tell me what you see, Dominic murmured, standing close behind me. pain, and transcendence. He was brilliant at capturing both simultaneously. The way suffering can be beautiful, how darkness and light coexist in the same space. I leaned back slightly, his warm solid against me. It's like your house. Destruction and creation occupying the same walls. I remember you saying that. His arms circled my waist, holding me against him in a way that would have seemed inappropriate if we weren't engaged. As it was, several people glanced at us and smiled. Young couple in love, unable to keep their hands off each other. You're right. About the art, about my house. About me, probably. I turned in his arms, studying his face. What do you mean? I'm destruction and creation in the same body. I tear things apart for a living, break them down to components, then rebuild them into something more efficient, more profitable. His jaw tightened. My father used to say I had no respect for tradition, that I burned down everything he'd built if given the chance. Would you? I did. Sold his company 6 months after he died. Used the capital to start something new. He would have hated it. Dominic's expression was complex. Guilt, satisfaction, grief all tangled together. But it was the right decision. His business model was outdated, inefficient. I made more from the acquisition than the company was worth running as is. And you felt guilty anyway. Yes. The admission was quiet. He died thinking I was a disappointment, that I'd destroy the family legacy. And I prove him right. I reached up, tracing the line of his jaw. Or you proved you were capable of building your own legacy, of being more than just your father's son. Dominic caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. You always do that. Do what? See the better version of me. The one I'm trying to be instead of the one I actually am. Maybe that's because the better version is who you actually are. You just don't believe it yet. I pulled him down for a kiss, not caring that we were in public, that people were watching. Let them watch. Let them see that this wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. When we finally broke apart, Dominic rested his forehead against mine. You're going to ruin me. Good. I whispered. You could use some ruining. We spent 3 hours in the gallery, moving through Rothko's progression from early figurative work to the abstract expressionism that had defined his career. Dominic asked intelligent questions, engaged with my analysis, offered his own interpretations that revealed how deeply he understood what he was seeing. This was the man I was marrying, not just a ruthless billionaire, but someone who could stand before art and feel something genuine. Someone who'd rearranged his schedule to bring me here, because he'd remembered a casual comment about 20th century color theory. After the gallery, we had dinner at a small Italian place in the village. Nothing fancy, just good food and dim lighting and conversation that flowed easily. We talked about everything and nothing. His favorite books, mostly philosophy and economic theory, with a weakness for sci-fi. My worst date, a congressional aide who'd spend 2 hours talking about himself before asking if I came from money. His first business deal, buying and flipping a struggling tech startup at 23. My mother, cancer like his, but when I was too young to really process what was happening. I'm sorry, Dominic said, reaching across the table to take my hand, that you lost her so young. I'm sorry you lost yours when you were old enough to understand what you were losing. I threaded my fingers through his. Do you think about her often? Every day. His thumb traced circles on my wrist. She used to say that love was choosing someone's worst qualities and deciding you could live with them. That romance was easy, but actual love required seeing someone fully, flaws and failures and petty cruelties, and choosing them anyway. That's depressing. It's honest. He smiled slightly. She and my father had a complicated marriage. They loved each other fiercely, but they also fought constantly. Passionate arguments about everything from politics to how to raise me. But they chose each other every day, even when it would have been easier not to. Is that what you want? That kind of marriage? Dominic was quiet for a long moment. I didn't think I wanted any kind of marriage. Thought I was better off alone, that relationships were just another variable I couldn't fully control. But now, he looked at me, something vulnerable in his eyes. Now I think maybe I want the complicated kind. The kind where we fight and make up and choose each other even when it's difficult. The kind my parents had. My heart clenched. That's not what we agreed to. I know. He raised my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles, but what we agreed to and what's actually happening are two different things. At least, for me they are. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Elena, tell me you feel it too. I wanted to deny it, wanted to maintain the careful distance that kept this arrangement safe and predictable, but I was tired of lying to both of us. I feel it, I admitted, whatever this is between us, and it terrifies me. Good. Dominic's smile was fierce. It should terrify us both, because if we do this, if we make this real, there's no going back. No pretending it was just convenience if it falls apart. What if it does fall apart? Then we'll have tried. We'll have been brave enough to risk it. He stood, pulling me up with him. Come on, let's go home. Home. He said it so casually, but the word carried weight. His penthouse, his space, becoming ours even temporarily. Another line crossed, another step toward something neither of us had planned, but both of us wanted. Back at the apartment, we stood in the living room with the city glittering below us. The moment waited with possibility. Dominic poured us both whiskey, and we sat on the couch, close but not touching, the space between us charged with tension. Thank you, I said finally, for today, for the gallery, for listening to me ramble about color theory for 3 hours. Thank you for letting me in, for seeing past the reputation to whoever I'm trying to be. He set down his glass and turned to face me fully. Can I ask you something? Yes. Why did you agree to this arrangement? Really? I know about your father's debts, but you could have refused, could have found another way. Why say yes? The question I've been avoiding asking myself. I took a sip of whiskey, letting the burn fortify me for honesty, because I was tired of performing, of being the perfect senator's daughter, of dating men who saw me as a political asset. And you were offering something that felt like freedom. A marriage without love meant a marriage without expectations, without the pressure to be anything other than what we negotiated. And now, his voice was soft, now that it's becoming something else? Now I'm terrified that I'm trading one set of expectations for another, that I'm falling for you and you're falling for who you think I am, and we'll both wake up one day and realize we made a terrible mistake. I met his eyes. I've been the disappointment before, Dominic. To my father, to men I've dated. I don't think I could survive being a disappointment to you. Something fierce and protective flashed in Dominic's expression. He set down his glass and pulled me into his lap, his arms wrapping around me tightly. You could never disappoint me, he said against my hair. Do you understand that? You could wake up tomorrow and decide you hate me, and I'd still think you were extraordinary, because you're honest and brave and you see the world with these eyes that find beauty in destruction. You're not a disappointment. Elena, you're the only thing I've wanted in years that wasn't about money or power or proving something. I pulled back to look at him. What am I about? You're about feeling something real, about remembering I'm human, not just a machine that acquires companies and manipulates markets. His hand cupped my face. You're about hope, I think, the possibility that maybe I'm not as broken as I thought. That maybe love isn't just a variable to control, but something worth risking everything for. Dominic. He kissed me before I could finish, and this time there was no holding back. His hands mapped my body with deliberate intent, and I responded with equal hunger, my fingers tangling in his hair. We kissed like drowning people, desperate, consuming, clinging to each other like the only solid thing in a spinning world. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His eyes were dark with want, his control visibly fraying. We should stop, he said, voice rough. Why? I shifted in his lap, feeling evidence of how much he wanted me. You want me. I want you. Why wait? Because you deserve romance. Candlelight and rose petals, and I deserve to choose. I cut him off, trailing my fingers down his chest. And I'm choosing this. You, now. Dominic groaned, his control shattering completely. He stood in one fluid motion, lifted me with him, and carried me toward his bedroom. Not the guest room with its careful distance, but his own space. Last chance, he murmured against my neck. Tell me to stop, and I will. But if we do this, Elena, if I make you mine tonight, there's no going back. This becomes real. We become real. I looked at him, this complicated, damaged man who'd bought a marriage but was offering his heart, who'd flown me to New York because I'd mentioned an art exhibition in passing, who looked at me like I was something precious instead of just another acquisition. Make me yours, I whispered. Make this real. And as he carried me through the doorway, his mouth claiming mine with devastating thoroughness, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. We were both falling, but maybe, just maybe, we'd catch each other after all. Chapter 5, the morning after. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the weight of an arm across my waist. For a disorienting moment, I didn't know where I was. Then memory flooded back. New York, the gallery, Dominic's penthouse. His hands on my skin, his mouth traveling places that made me shiver even in recollection. The way he'd been achingly gentle despite the hunger I'd felt coiled in his body. The way he'd murmur my name like a prayer as we'd come together. The way he'd made love to me until dawn broke over Manhattan, as promised, until I'd forgotten everything except how it felt to finally, completely, belong to someone. I turned carefully, not wanting to wake him. Dominic slept on his stomach, one arm thrown across the pillow where my head had been, dark hair tousled and face relaxed in a way I'd never seen. Asleep, he looked younger. The sharp edges of his features softened, the perpetual tension that lived his jaw finally released. Beautiful. The word rose unbidden. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful. Dark and compelling, and slightly terrifying even in repose. You're staring, he murmured without opening his eyes, a smile tugging at his lips. Heat flooded my face. I was just admiring the view. He rolled onto his side, eyes opening to reveal that pale green gaze that always saw too much. Fair's fair. I spent half a night watching you sleep. That's creepy. That's romantic. He pulled me closer, and I went willingly, tucking myself against his chest. His skin was warm, and I could feel his heartbeat steady and strong beneath my palm. How do you feel? The question was loaded with concern. Last night had been intense, beautiful and overwhelming, and nothing like I'd expected. Dominic had been patient, careful, attuned to every sound I'd made. But there had been moments when his control had slipped entirely, when I'd seen the raw one he usually kept leashed, and those moments had been the most thrilling of all. So I admitted, but good, really good. His hand traced lazy patterns on my spine. No regrets. Should I have them? I took your virginity on a first date. That's not exactly romance novel behavior. His tone was light, but I heard the underlying worry. I should have waited. Should have made it more special. I propped myself up on one elbow to look at him properly. It was special. You flew me to New York, took me to see art I love, told me you were falling for me. Then you made love to me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. How could that be anything but special? Something eased in Dominic's expression. He cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. You're going to ruin me for anyone else. Good thing we're getting married then. Good thing. He kissed me, slow and thorough, and I felt desire stir again despite the pleasant ache between my thighs. Though I should probably feed you first. We missed dinner last night. We had dinner at that Italian place. That was 10 hours ago. Elena, it's past noon. At my surprised look, he smiled. We were occupied. Occupied. Such a polite word for what we'd done. The ways he'd touched me, the sounds I'd made, the moment when I finally understood what all the fuss was about. I'd been so focused on checking boxes, on being good, that I'd never understood pleasure could feel like drowning and salvation simultaneously. Shower first, I suggested, suddenly aware of how thoroughly debauched I probably looked. Together? The suggestion was casual, but his eyes darkened with interest. Is that wise? Probably not. He slid out of bed in one fluid motion, completely unself-conscious about his nudity. I'd explored every inch of him last night, but seeing him in daylight, the lean muscle, the subtle scars, the way he moved with predatory grace, made my breath catch. When had we ever been wise? The shower was enormous, all glass and chrome with rainfall and body jets. Dominic adjusted the temperature and pulled me under the spray, his hands immediately finding my waist. Water sluiced over us both, and I tipped my head back, letting it wash away the residue of sleep and sex. "Turn around," Dominic murmured, reaching for shampoo. "Let me?" I obeyed, and his hand slid into my hair, massaging my scalp with surprising gentleness. It was intimate in a different way than what we'd done last night, this quiet domesticity, being cared for. No one had washed my hair since I was a child, and the gesture made something ache in my chest. "You're tense," he observed, his fingers working at the knots of my shoulders. "Just thinking about how this changes things. What happens when we go back to Virginia, to reality?" I turned to face him, water streaming between us. "Last night was perfect, Dominic, but we still barely know each other. We've had one actual date. 2, if you count the engagement party." His hand settled on my hips, thumbs tracing patterns on my skin. "But you're right. We're doing this backward, getting engaged and dating, then sleeping together. Most people would call that insane. Are we insane? Probably." He leaned down, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "But I'd rather be insane with you than sensible with anyone else." We finished showering, though it took longer than necessary because Dominic kept finding excuses to touch me, to kiss me, to make me gasp against the tiles. By the time we made it to the kitchen, I was ravenous and pleasantly exhausted. Dominic cooked, which surprised me. I'd assumed someone with his wealth would have staffed for everything, but he moved around the kitchen with confident ease, producing omelets and coffee that tasted like heaven. Hidden talents, I observed, watching him plate our food. My mother insisted I learn. Said no son of hers would be helpless in the kitchen. He set a plate in front of me, then took the seat across. She died before she could teach me much beyond breakfast, but I've picked up a few things over the years. "Do you cook often?" "When I'm stressed, or when I want to impress someone." His eyes met mine. "Last night, I wanted to impress you. This morning, I'm stress cooking." I set down my fork. "Why are you stressed?" Dominic was quiet for a moment, studying his coffee as if it held answers. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "Because last night changed everything. Because you gave me something precious and irreplaceable, and now I'm terrified of fucking this up." He looked up, and the vulnerability in his eyes stole my breath. "I don't know how to do this. Elena, how to be in a relationship that matters. Every instinct I have says to control the situation, to manage variables, to protect myself from potential loss. But you can't control love. You can't manage feelings. And I don't know how to surrender that control without losing myself completely." The honesty of the admission made my heart ache. Here was the truth beneath Dominic's ruthless exterior. A man terrified of caring, because caring meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant potential devastation. "I don't know how to do this either," I said softly. "I've spent my whole life being what other people needed. The perfect daughter, the perfect political prop, the perfect date who never asks for too much. I don't know how to just be, how to want something and ask for it, how to let someone see me without the performance. Then maybe we figure out together." Dominic reached across the table, taking my hand. "No more performing. No more pretending we're something we're not. Just honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's terrifying. Especially then." His grip tightened. "Because I think the terrifying parts are the only ones that matter. The rest is just noise." We finished breakfast in comfortable silence, hands linked across the table. It felt significant somehow, this quiet domesticity, the ease of being together without needing to fill every moment with conversation, like we were learning a new language together, the vocabulary of intimacy that went beyond physical attraction. After breakfast, Dominic showed me the rest of the penthouse, the office where he worked when in New York, all sleek lines and minimalist design. The library, smaller than the one in Virginia, but packed with books that looked actually read rather than decorative. The terrace with its panoramic city views, and furniture built for lazy Sunday mornings. "I could live here," I said, leaning against a railing and watching the city pulse below. When I'm in New York for research or conferences, if that's something you'd be open to. This is your home now, too. Dominic moved behind me, arms circling my waist. Or will be in 4 weeks. All of my properties are yours. Elena, use them whenever you want. That's not what I mean. I turn in his arms, needing him to understand. I'm not asking permission. I'm asking if you're okay with me having a life that's separate from you. Graduate school, possibly a career, time and space that's mine. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You think I'm going to try to control you, limit your freedom. You're a man who's built his fortune on control, who admits he doesn't know how to surrender it. I held his gaze. I need to know that marrying you doesn't mean giving up everything I am, that I'm not trading my father's expectations for yours. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, his expression complex. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. I don't want to control you, Elena. I want to support you. There's a difference. He cupped my face in his hands. Yes, my instinct is to manage, to protect, to eliminate any threat to what's mine. But you're not a business deal or an asset to be managed. You're a person with her own ambitions and needs, and those don't stop being valid just because you're marrying me. Then you're okay with me finishing my degree, working if I want to. I'm more than okay with it. I'm insisting on it. His thumb stroked my cheekbones. I fell for you because you challenged me, because you had your own mind and weren't afraid to use it. Why would I want to change that? You can have whatever life you want. Elena, graduate school, museum work, teaching, all of it. This penthouse, any of my properties, they're yours to use however you need. Relief flooded through me so intensely it made my knees weak. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic respect. He pressed a kiss to my forehead. Though I reserve the right to be occasionally overbearing about your safety. Old habits die hard. Occasionally overbearing I can handle. Good. His arms tighten around me. Because I have a feeling there will be moments when my control issues rear their ugly head. When that happens, call me on it. Don't let me get away with treating you like something to be managed. I won't. I kissed him, pouring promise into contact. We'll figure this out. The balance between your need for control and my need for independence. For weeks, he murmured against my lips. For weeks until this becomes official. Until you're legally mine and I'm legally yours. Are you nervous? Terrified. But he smiled as he said it. Terrified and excited and more hopeful than I've been in years. You do that to me, Elena. Make me believe in possibilities I'd written off as impossible. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed insistently. He ignored it, but it buzzed again then again, with a muttered curse. He pulled it from his pocket and checked the screen. His expression darkened immediately. What's wrong? I asked, alarm prickling my spine. My board chair. 3 missed calls. He swiped the call back, his jaw tight. This better be important. Richard. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but I watched Dominic's face go from irritated to furious in the space of seconds. When... Pause. How bad? Another pause, longer this time. No, don't do anything until I get back. I'll handle this myself. He ended the call and stood motionless for a moment, staring at nothing. Dominic? I touched his arm. What happened? Someone leaked information about our merger negotiations. Confidential details that only a handful of people knew. His voice was ice. The target company is threatening to back out, which would cost me millions and make me look weak. And whoever leaked it did so deliberately, specifically to sabotage the deal. Do you know who? I have suspicions. He was already moving, heading back inside. But I need to verify before I act. I'm sorry, Elena. We need to go back to Virginia. Now. The shift was jarring, from intimate mourning to crisis management in seconds. I watched him transform before my eyes. The vulnerable man who made love to me and cooked me breakfast disappearing behind the ruthless billionaire persona. Of course, I said, following him inside. Whatever you need. Within 30 minutes, we were packed and heading to the airport. Dominic made calls the entire drive, his voice clipped and commanding as he organized damage control. I sat quietly beside him, recognizing that this was part of his world too. The constant crisis management, the need to project strength even when threatened. On the plane, he finally put down his phone and looked at me. "I'm sorry. This isn't how I wanted today to go." "It's fine. This is your job." "It's more than my job. He stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Someone is trying to undermine me, and I think it's connected to our engagement." Ice flooded my veins. "What do you mean?" "The leak happened 3 days ago, right after our engagement party, when half of Virginia saw us together." His eyes were hard. "Someone doesn't want this marriage to happen, or they want to make me look weak before it does. Either way, they're using you as leverage." "Who would do that?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." His hand found mine, squeezing gently. "And when I do, they're going to regret it." The promise in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, it made me feel oddly protected. This was the other side of Dominic's control issues. The fierce protectiveness, the willingness to destroy anyone who threatened what was his. I was his now, for better or worse. I'd given myself to him completely, and he was going to war to protect that. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Just be careful. Whoever did this might try to approach you directly, feed you information, or lies designed to drive a wedge between us." He brought my hand to his lips. "Don't trust anyone, Elena. Not your father's colleagues, not old family friends, not even people who seem sympathetic. Until I know who's behind this, everyone is a potential threat." "That sounds paranoid." "That's how you stay ahead in my world. Assume everyone has ulterior motives until they prove otherwise." His jaw tightened. "I won't let anyone hurt you. I promise." We landed in Virginia as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and crimson. Dominic's driver waited, and we drove in tense silence toward my family's estate. The romantic weekend had been thoroughly shattered by reality, and I mourned the loss even as I understood its necessity. At my door, Dominic pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "I'll call you later, after I've dealt with this mess." "Be careful. Always." But his smile was predatory, though I suspect it's the other person who should be careful. I don't take kindly to being manipulated. I watched him drive away, then turned to find my father waiting in the doorway. His expression was troubled. "We need to talk," he said. Dread settled in my stomach. "About what?" "About Dominic Ashford. About what you're getting yourself into." He gestured inside. "There are things you should know. Things I should have told you before you agreed to this marriage." I followed him into his study, the same room where he'd first informed me of the arrangement. It felt like years ago rather than weeks. So much had changed since that night. My understanding of Dominic, my feelings, my entire future. "What things?" I asked, taking the seat he indicated. My father poured himself whiskey, then seemed to think better of it and set the glass down untouched. "I've been hearing rumors about Dominic's business practices, about deals that aren't quite legal, about people who crossed him and disappeared." "Disappeared how?" "Financially ruined. Careers destroyed. One man lost everything, his company, his reputation, his marriage, after he tried to back out of a deal with Dominic." My father's expression was grave. I knew Dominic was ruthless. That was part of his appeal, frankly, but I'm beginning to think he's more than ruthless. He's dangerous, Elena, and I'm not sure marrying him is safe. I thought about the man who'd made love to me with aching gentleness, who'd cooked me breakfast and admitted his fears about vulnerability, who'd looked at me like I was precious rather than an acquisition. "It's too late to back out now," I said. "The invitations are sent, the deposits paid. And more importantly, you still owe him $12 million. I'll find another way to pay him back. Take longer, but..." "No." I stood, surprising both of us. "I'm not backing out. Whatever rumors you've heard, whatever concerns you have, they don't change what I've decided. I'm marrying Dominic in 4 weeks. Elena, please, think about this." "I have thought about it. More than you know," I didn't add. "Yes, Dominic can be ruthless. Yes, he has enemies. But he's also brilliant and complex and capable of genuine care. You wanted me to marry someone powerful enough to solve your problems. Well, I am. That comes with consequences. But they're consequences I've accepted. My father studied me for a long moment. You care about him. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. That makes this worse, not better. If he's as dangerous as I'm hearing, caring about him puts you at risk. He moved closer, his expression more vulnerable than I'd seen in years. You're all I have, Elena. I can't lose you, too. The admission startled me, this glimpse of actual paternal concern beneath the political calculation. You're not going to lose me. But you need to trust that I can handle this, that I know what I'm getting into. Do you? He asked quietly. Do you really understand what it means to marry a man like Dominic Ashford? I thought about the phone call, the immediate shift to crisis mode, about his promise to destroy whoever had betrayed him, about the cold fury in his eyes when he talked about protecting what was his. Yes, I said, I understand exactly what it means. And I'm doing it anyway, because loving Dominic. And I was beginning to suspect that's what this was. Love, terrifying, exhilarating, and completely logical, meant accepting all of him, the gentleness and the ruthlessness, the vulnerability and the violence, the man who washed my hair, and the man who destroyed his enemies without mercy. I could handle it. I would handle it. I just hoped I was right about that. Dominic called at midnight. I was still awake, staring at the ceiling and replaying the conversation with my father. Did I wake you? His voice was rough with exhaustion. No, couldn't sleep. I sat up, cradling the phone. Did you find out who leaked the information? Yes. Silence, heavy and weighted. It was one of my senior executives. Someone I'd trusted for 5 years. He was paid by a competitor to sabotage the merger. What are you going to do? What I always do. Destroy him. His tone was matter-of-fact, businesslike. By morning, he'll be unemployable in finance. His reputation will be in ruins. He'll be lucky if he can get a job managing a convenience store. I should have been horrified. Should have recognized this as a dangerous ruthlessness my father had warned about. Instead, I felt oddly calm. He betrayed you. Yes, and there are always consequences for betrayal. Dominic's voice softened slightly. Does this frighten you? Knowing what I'm capable of. Should it? Most people would say yes. That this side of me, the side that destroys careers and ruins lives, is something to be feared. Are you going to destroy me? I asked quietly. Never. The word was fierce, absolute. You're the exception to every rule, Elena, the one person I would never hurt. Then I'm not afraid. And I meant it. Whatever darkness lived in Dominic, I trusted that it would never be directed at me, that I was safe in ways his enemies could never be. Come over tomorrow, when you're done handling this. Elena, I miss you. The admission came easier than expected. We had one perfect night together, and I want more of them. So come over tomorrow. We'll figure out the rest as we go. You're remarkable. His voice was rough with emotion. Absolutely remarkable. So are you. I smiled into the darkness. Even when you're being terrifying. Especially then, he corrected, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Get some sleep, Elena. I'll see you tomorrow. After we hung up, I lay back down, staring at the ceiling and thinking about choices. About marrying a man who was capable of both exquisite gentleness and calculated destruction. About loving someone complicated and dangerous and utterly devoted. My father was right. Dominic was dangerous. But not to me. Never to me. And maybe that was enough. Maybe love wasn't about finding someone safe and predictable. Maybe it was about finding someone whose darkness matched your own. Someone who saw your flaws and loved you not in spite of them, but because of them. Someone who would destroy the world to protect you. For weeks, I thought as sleep finally claimed me. For weeks until I married the wolf. I couldn't wait. Chapter 6, Consequences. The story hit the financial news 3 days later. I was having coffee with my father's campaign manager when my phone lit up with a text from Dominic. Don't read the news. I'll explain everything tonight. Which, of course, made me immediately pull up every news site I could find. The headlines were brutal. Ashford Capital executive terminated amid allegations of corporate espionage. Marcus Sullivan's fall from grace. How one bad decision destroyed a career. Dominic Ashford sends message to competitors. Betrayal has consequences. I clicked through to the full article, my coffee growing cold as I read. Marcus Sullivan, Dominic's senior vice president of acquisitions, had been fired and was now facing multiple lawsuits. Breach of contract, theft of trade secrets, fraud. His professional reputation was being systematically dismantled in real time. Former colleagues were giving interviews about concerns they'd had about his ethics. Business schools were removing him from alumni profiles. His wife had filed for divorce. It was comprehensive, ruthless, and exactly what Dominic had promised. Elena, the campaign manager, Catherine, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd been with my father for years, was watching me with concern. You look pale. Is everything all right? Fine. I set down my phone, trying to process what I'd just read. Just wedding stress. For weeks until the big day. Catherine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Your father mentioned you seemed uncertain about the arrangement. I tensed. Did he? He's worried about you. About whether Dominic Ashford is the right choice. She leaned forward, voice lowering conspiratorially. Between us, Elena, there are rumors about Mr. Ashford's business practices, about what happens to people who cross him. I'm aware of his reputation. Are you aware that he's currently destroying a man's entire life over a business disagreement? Catherine gestured toward my phone. That article you just read, that's your future husband's work. Is that the kind of man you want to tie yourself to? The criticism sparked something defensive in me. Marcus Sullivan committed corporate espionage. He stole confidential information and sold it to competitors. What did you expect Dominic to do? Thank him. I expected basic human decency. Termination, sure. Legal action, possibly. But this, she shook her head. This is vindictive. Cruel. The kind of response that suggests Mr. Ashford cares more about appearing powerful than actually being just. You don't know him. Neither do you, really. You've known him, 6 weeks? 8. Catherine's expression was sympathetic, but firm. I'm not trying to upset you, dear. I'm trying to protect you. Your father may have agreed to this arrangement, but you still have a choice. It's not too late to back out. Yes, it is. I stood, gathering my things. The invitations are sent. The deposits are paid. And more than that, I stopped, realizing what I was about to admit. More than that, I want this marriage. I want him. Catherine's eyes widened slightly. You care about him. Yes. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. I know it's fast. I know he's complicated and dangerous, and not what anyone would choose for me. But I'm choosing him anyway. Elena, thank you for the concern, Catherine. But my mind is made up. I headed for the door, then paused. And for what it's worth, I don't think Dominic's actions are about appearing powerful. I think they're about protecting what's his. There's a difference. I left before she could respond, my heart hammering. The conversation had crystallized something I'd been avoiding acknowledging. I was defending Dominic. Not because I had to, not because it was expected, but because I believed in him. Believed that beneath the ruthless exterior was a man capable of loyalty and love, even if he expressed it in ways that made others uncomfortable. My phone buzzed with another text from Dominic. My place, 7 p.m. Please. The please made me smile despite the morning's tension. For a man who usually commanded rather than asked, that single word revealed more vulnerability than paragraphs of explanation. I texted back, I'll be there. Ashford Manor felt different when I arrived that evening. The usual quiet had been replaced by tension. Staff moving quickly through halls, voices murmur behind closed doors, the sense of an organization mobilized for battle. Mrs. Thornberry greeted me at the door, her expression more severe than usual. Miss Castellane, Mr. Ashford is in his office. He asked that you go straight up when you arrived. Is everything all right? I'm sure Mr. Ashford will explain. But her tone suggested everything was decidedly not all right. I climbed the stairs to the second floor, where Dominic's home office occupied a corner suite with views of the gardens. The door was open, and I could hear his voice, cold, precise, devastating. I don't care if he has 5 children and a mortgage. He made his choice when he sold me out. Now he lives with the consequences. No, not negotiable. Every lawsuit stands. I want him buried so deep he never surfaces. Excellent. Send me the final documentation. He hung up as I entered, and the ice in his expression melted slightly when he saw me. Elena, hi. I moved into the room, taking in his appearance. He looked exhausted, tie discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up, dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept since our phone call 3 nights ago. You look terrible, charming as always, but his lips quirked into an almost smile. Thank you for coming. You said please. How could I refuse? I perched on the edge of his desk, studying him. I read the articles about Marcus Sullivan. Dominic's expression shuddered. And I want to hear your side, not the media's version, yours. He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching my face. Whatever he found there must have satisfied him, because he leaned back in his chair and began to talk. Marcus Sullivan started at Ashford Capital 5 years ago. Smart, ambitious, exactly the kind of person I wanted in senior management. I promoted him twice, gave him significant bonuses, trusted him with confidential information about deals worth hundreds of millions. His jaw tightened. 2 months ago, a competitor approached him, offered him $5 million to leak details of our merger negotiations. He took it, copied files, sent emails, fed them information that could have destroyed the deal and cost me not just money, but credibility. In my world, Elena, reputation is everything. If people think you're weak, if they think you can be betrayed without consequence, you're finished. So you made an example of him. Yes. No apology in his voice, no pretense of regret. I destroyed his career, his reputation, everything he'd built, because the alternative, letting him walk away with a slap on the wrist, would have sent a message that betraying me is acceptable, and I can't allow that message to stand. I thought about Catherine's words, about basic human decency versus vindictive cruelty, about where the line was between appropriate consequences and excessive punishment. His wife left him, I said quietly. The articles mentioned she filed for divorce. Yes. Something flickered in Dominic's eyes. Not quite guilt, but maybe discomfort. I didn't orchestrate that. But I imagine discovering your husband committed corporate espionage for $5 million he never told you about would damage a marriage. His children will suffer. They will. Dominic leaned forward, his expression intense. And that's on him, Elena. He made the choice to betray me. He knew the risks and took them anyway. I didn't put his family in this position. He did. I'm just ensuring the consequences match the crime. By destroying him completely, by making sure he never works again. I slid off the desk, needing to pace. I get protecting yourself, Dominic. I get sending a message. But this feels excessive. Does it? He stood, moving to block my path. Let me tell you what excessive looks like. Excessive is what Marcus's betrayal could have cost me. $100 million deal falling apart. My reputation damaged. My board questioning my judgment. Other employees thinking they can sell secrets without consequence. That's excessive. Elena, what I'm doing is proportional. To you, maybe, but to the rest of the world. The rest of the world doesn't matter. His hands gripped my shoulders, not hard but firm. Your opinion matters. What you think of me matters. But strangers who don't understand my world, who've never built something from nothing and had protected, their judgment means nothing. I stared at him, at this man I'd given myself to 3 nights ago. This man I was going to marry in 4 weeks. This man who could be tender and ruthless in equal measure, who saw nothing wrong with obliterating someone's entire life because they crossed him. I need you to understand something, I said carefully. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm not going to try to reform you or soften you or turn you into some gentler version of yourself. But I also need to know that when we're married, when we have children, I gestured at his office, at the aftermath of his retaliation. This side of you won't touch our family. That you can separate business from home. Dominic's expression softened. He released my shoulders and cupped my face instead, his touch gentle. You and any children we have will be the most protected things in my life. This side of me, the ruthless, vindictive side, only appears when someone threatens what's mine. And you're mine now, Elena, which means this protects you, not threatens you. What if I do something you consider a betrayal? The question hung between us, weighted with importance. Dominic's eyes never left mine. You won't. But if I did, you won't. His voice was absolute, certain in a way that should have been arrogant, but somehow wasn't. Because you're not capable of that kind of betrayal. You're too honest, too fundamentally decent. You might challenge me, might disagree with me, might make me furious with your stubbornness, but you won't sell me out. You won't use me and throw me away. You're not built that way. I wanted to argue, to point out that he barely knew me, that people surprise you all the time. But looking into his eyes, I saw something that stole my breath, complete, utter faith. He believed in me in a way no one ever had before. Believed I was better than my worst impulses, stronger than my fears. What if you're wrong about me? I whispered, I'm not. He kissed me, soft and sweet. But if somehow I am, if you do something that feels like betrayal, I'd try to understand why before I reacted. I'd remember that you're the woman I love, not a business adversary. I'd give you grace I'd give no one else. The word stopped my heart. Love. Dominic went very still, as if only now realizing what he'd said. Yes, love. He said it stronger this time, more certain. I'm in love with you, Elena. Have been since before New York. Probably since the engagement party when you defended me to your father's friend. Maybe even before that. I'm in love with you, and that changes everything. My eyes burn with tears I refuse to let fall. You can't just say that. We barely know each other. I know everything that matters. I know you're brilliant and brave and honest to a fault. I know you see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. I know you gave yourself to me completely even though you had every reason to hold back. His thumbs brushed away tears that had escaped despite my best efforts. I know I want to spend the rest of my life learning everything else. Every preference, every fear, every dream you've ever had, that's love, Elena. At least, it's the only kind I know how to feel. This is insane. But I was smiling through my tears. We're getting married in 4 weeks, and you're just now telling me you love me? I'm not good at this. The emotional honesty part. His expression was rueful. I kept thinking I should wait for the right moment, the perfect romantic setting. But then you're standing in my office questioning whether I'm a monster, and all I want is for you to understand that whatever monstrous things I'm capable of, they don't extend to you, could never extend to you, because I love you. I kissed him, pouring 3 nights of missing him and 3 days of defending him and 1,000 complicated feelings into the contact. He responded with matching intensity, his arms wrapping around me tightly, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this. Us, together, choosing each other despite every logical reason not to. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I rested my forehead against his. I love you too, I whispered. God help me, I love you too. Dominic's smile was devastating. Genuine joy transforming his face from handsome to beautiful. Say it again. I love you. Louder this time, more certain. I love you even though you're ruthless and controlling, and you destroyed a man's entire life this week. I love you even though you terrify me sometimes. I love you even though this is moving way too fast, and we're probably both insane. We're definitely both insane. He kissed me again, then pulled back with visible reluctance. Stay for dinner. Stay the night. I've barely seen you in 3 days, and I've missed you. I've missed you too. I smoothed his rumpled shirt, enjoying this excuse to touch him. But I can't stay the night. Not yet. People are already talking about how fast we're moving. If I start sleeping over before the wedding, I don't care what people say. I know, but I do. At his frown, I elaborated. This is still Virginia, Dominic. Traditional, conservative Virginia, where reputations matter. If I'm going to be your wife, I need to maintain some semblance of propriety, at least until after the wedding. The wedding is 4 weeks away. That's a long time to sleep alone. You survived 35 years of it. You can manage for more weeks. I kissed his jaw, enjoying the rough stubble. Besides, anticipation makes everything better. By our wedding night, you'll be desperate for me. I'm already desperate for you. His hand slid down to my hips, pulling me closer. Every night since New York, I've woken up reaching for you. The bed feels too empty without you in it. The admission made my heart clench. For weeks, I repeated, though I was weakening. Then I'm yours every night for the rest of our lives. Promise? Promise. I kissed him once more, then forced myself to step back before I lost all resolve. Now feed me dinner. I'm starving, and I want to hear about this merger deal you're trying to salvage. We ate in his private dining room. Smaller, more intimate than the formal one. Dominic had clearly instructed Mrs. Thornberry on my preferences, because every dish was something I loved, paired with wines chosen specifically for me rather than him. You're doing the thoughtful thing again, I observe, savoring perfectly prepared salmon. Is that a problem? No, it's just unexpected. Men in my experience don't pay this kind of attention. Then you've been dating boys, not men. Dominic's eyes glinted with amusement. Besides, taking care of you makes me happy. Is that so strange? Yes. You're supposed to be a ruthless billionaire who only cares about profit margins and destroying his enemies. I'm allowed to have layers. He reached across the table to take my hand. Speaking of which, have you thought about what you want for the wedding? Beyond the basics your father and the planners have arranged. I blinked at the subject change. Not really. I assumed it would be fairly traditional. Church ceremony, reception at my family's estate, standard vows. What if it wasn't standard? What if we wrote our own vows? Made it actually meaningful rather than just a performance for guests? The suggestion surprised me. You want to write vows? I want to make promises to you that actually matter, not generic pledges about sickness and health, but real commitments about what our life together will look like. He squeezed my hand. Unless you prefer traditional? No, I stopped trying to articulate what I was feeling. I like that. Making it ours rather than just going through motions. Good. Dominic's smile was soft. Then we'll write our own vows. And anything else you want changed, just tell me. This is your wedding too. Elena, not just a business transaction or political theater. Even though it started as both those things, even though he raised my hand to his lips. What we started as doesn't matter. What we're becoming does. After dinner, we moved to his study, a smaller, more comfortable room than his office, lined with books and warmed by a crackling fire. I curled into the corner of the leather couch while Dominic poured us both whiskey. Tell me something, I said as he settled beside me. Something I don't know about you. Like what? Anything. A childhood memory, a secret dream, something that doesn't appear in your carefully managed public profile. Dominic was quiet for a moment, swirling his whiskey. When he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. I wanted to be a teacher. Before my mother died, before I understood what my father expected of me, I thought I'd study philosophy, teach at a small liberal arts college somewhere, spend my life discussing big questions with students who actually care about ideas. The revelation stunned me. What changed? Reality. My father made it clear that teaching was beneath us, that I had responsibilities to the family business. And after my mother died, I was so angry I couldn't imagine doing something as gentle as teaching. I needed an outlet for all that rage in business, particularly hostile takeovers and aggressive acquisitions. Provided one. Do you regret it? Not becoming a teacher? Sometimes. He took a sip of whiskey. Late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder who I might have been if I'd followed that dream. Whether I'd be happier. Less. He gestured vaguely. This. Ruthless? Successful? Lonely? All of the above. His eyes met mine. But then I think about how following this path led me to you, and the regret fades. Because whatever mistakes I've made, whatever darkness I've accumulated along the way, it all becomes worth it if it means I get to have you. I set down my glass and moved closer, needing to touch him. You could still teach, guest lectures at business schools, mentoring, something. Maybe. His arms circled my waist, pulling me against his side. What about you? Any secret dreams I should know about? I wanted to be an artist. A painter, specifically. I smiled at the memory. I was obsessed with creating my own versions of the paintings I loved. My mother encouraged it. She was artistic too. But after she died, my father made it clear that art was a hobby, not a career. That I needed to be practical. So you studied art history instead. Academic appreciation rather than creation. Exactly. Close enough to feel connected to what I loved. Safe enough that my father approved. I leaned my head on his shoulder. We're quite a pair, aren't it? Two people who gave up on their dreams to meet other people's expectations. Maybe. Dominic's hand traced patterns on my hip. Or maybe we just needed to find the right person to dream with. Someone who makes the compromises feel worth it. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire and simply existing together. This was what I'd been craving without realizing it. Not grand romantic gestures or expensive gifts, but quiet moments where we could just be. Where Dominic could be something other than the ruthless billionaire, and I could be something other than the senator's daughter. Where we could just be Elena and Dominic, two broken people learning to be whole together. For weeks, Dominic murmured eventually. For weeks, and you'll be Elena Ashford. Are you sure you want that? Me taking your name? I looked up at him. I could hyphenate. Castellane Ashford. I wanted to have my name. Want everyone to know you belong to me. His eyes darkened. Is that primitive and possessive? Yes. Does it bother you? I thought about it, about the implications of taking his name, about the statement it made. In another context, with another man, I might have bristled. But with Dominic, whose possessiveness felt like protection rather than ownership, whose claiming of me made me feel cherished rather than controlled. No, I said honestly, it doesn't bother me. I want to be Elena Ashford, want to belong to you in all the ways that matter. His kiss was deep and claiming, and I responded with matching intensity. We made out like teenagers on his couch, hands exploring, breaking apart only when breathing became necessary. For weeks, I gasped against his mouth. We can survive for more weeks. Barely. But he released me, his control admirable even as his eyes betrayed how much he wanted to continue. Let me take you home before I forget why we're waiting. The drive back to my family's estate was quiet, hands linked across the console. At my door, Dominic pulled me close for one last kiss. I love you, he said against my lips, even when you make me wait. Especially then, probably. I love you too. I kissed him again, then forced myself to step back. Call me tomorrow? Every day until the wedding. Possibly twice a day. His smile was warm. Get some sleep, Elena. I watched him drive away, then turned to find my father waiting in the entrance hall. His expression was troubled. You're in love with him. Not a question. Yes. Elena, I know what you're going to say, Dad. That it's too fast, that I barely know him, that he's dangerous and I'm making a mistake. I moved past him toward the stairs. But I'm 26 years old. I'm allowed to make my own mistakes. And for what it's worth, I don't think Dominic is a mistake. I think he might be the first right choice I've made in years. I hope you're right. My father's voice was heavy with concern. Because if you're wrong, the cost will be devastating. Not just financially or politically, emotionally. You're giving him your heart. Elena, men like Dominic Ashford don't know how to be careful with hearts. Maybe he'll learn. I paused on the stairs, looking back at him. Maybe we'll teach each other how to be careful, how to be vulnerable, how to love despite being terrified of it. I went to bed thinking about Dominic's confession, that he loved me, that he'd loved me for weeks without saying it, about how we were both learning a language neither of us spoke fluently, stumbling through declarations and promises, and trying desperately not to break each other in the process. For weeks until I married him. For weeks until I became Mrs. Dominic Ashford, and this arrangement transformed into something real and permanent and hopefully, finally, right. I fell asleep with my phone on the pillow beside me, waiting for his good night text that arrived like clockwork at midnight. Missing you already. 3 weeks, 6 days, and approximately 14 hours until you're mine forever. Not that I'm counting. I smiled and typed back, you're definitely counting. So am I. Good night, Dominic. Good night, my love. Dream of me. I did. Dreams of Gothic manners and contemporary art, of whispered confessions and possessive touches, of a man who could destroy enemies and wash my hair with equal skill. Dreams of a future that terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. Dreams of love. Chapter 7, Breaking Point. The text came at 3 a.m., 3 weeks before the wedding. I woke to my phone buzzing insistently, Dominic's name flashing on the screen. My heart immediately jumped to worst-case scenarios. Accident, emergency, crisis. I answered before the third ring. Dominic? What's wrong? I need you to trust me. His voice was tight, controlled in a way that suggested he was barely holding it together. Don't ask questions. Don't argue. Just trust me. Ice flooded my veins. You're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. But I need you to pack a bag, enough for a few days, and be ready in 30 minutes. Angelo is coming to get you. What? Why? Dominic, what's happening? I can't explain over the phone. Please, Elena. Just do this for me. A pause, and quieter. Please. That word again. The one he only used when he was desperate. I was already out of bed, moving toward my closet on autopilot. Okay, 30 minutes. But Dominic. I know. I'll explain everything when you're safe. I love you. The call ended before I could respond. I stood frozen for a moment. Tried to process what had just happened. Then training kicked in. The training of being a senator's daughter who'd grown up understanding that sometimes things happen that required immediate action without explanation. I packed quickly, clothes, toiletries, my laptop and thesis materials, important documents. I was zipping the bag when my father appeared in the doorway, already dressed despite the hour. Where are you going? His face was pale, expression strained. I don't know. Dominic called. Said Angela was coming to get me. I looked at him, suddenly afraid. Dad, what's happening? Do you know something? He was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, I understood. He did know something, had known something, maybe for days or weeks, and hadn't told me. Dad. My voice hardened. What is happening? There have been threats. The admission came reluctantly. Against Dominic. Against you. We thought they were just talk, corporate intimidation. But tonight, he stopped, running a hand through his hair. Tonight, someone tried to breach Ashford Manor security. They got further than they should have before being stopped. My knees went weak. I sat heavily on the bed. Someone tried to break into Dominic's house? Not just someone, a team. Professional, well-equipped, clearly well-funded. My father moved into the room, his expression troubled. The security team apprehended 2 of them. The others escaped. But it's clear the target wasn't just Dominic. It was information. About you, about the wedding, about your relationship. Why? We don't know yet. But Dominic's convinced you're not safe here. That whoever orchestrated this might try again, might come after you directly. He met my eyes. He called me 20 minutes ago. Asked permission to take you somewhere secure until the threat is neutralized. I agreed. You agreed? Without consulting me. There wasn't time for consultation. Elena, these people are dangerous. Dominic is right. You need to be somewhere they can't find you. Anger warred with fear. I'm not a child. I should have been told about the threats weeks ago. Should have been part of decisions about my own safety. You're right. My father's admission surprised me. We were wrong to keep you in the dark. But right now, that doesn't matter. What matters is getting you somewhere secure before whoever sent that team realizes they failed and tries again. Headlights swept across my window. Angelo's Range Rover pulling into the driveway. I grabbed my bag, my hand shaking slightly despite my attempt at composure. Where's Dominic taking me? I don't know. He wouldn't say, even to me. The fewer people who know your location, the safer you are. My father pulled me into an unexpected embrace. Be careful, sweetheart. And tell Dominic. Tell him if anything happens to you, no amount of money or power will protect him from me. I hugged him back, this complicated man who'd sold me to solve his problems, but still loved me in his limited, political way. Nothing's going to happen to me. Dominic won't let it. Angelo was waiting by the car, his expression more severe than I'd ever seen it. He took my bag without a word and loaded it into the back, then opened the passenger door. Miss Castellane. I slid into the seat, my heart hammering. Where are we going, Angelo? Mr. Ashford will explain when we arrive. He pulled away from the estate, his eyes constantly checking mirrors. For now, please stay low in your seat, just as a precaution. The drive took over 2 hours, winding through back roads I didn't recognize. Eventually, we pulled up to a small private airfield where Dominic's jet waited, engines already running. And standing at the base of the stairs, looking exhausted and furious and relieved all at once, was Dominic. I was out of the car before Angelo could fully stop running toward him. Dominic met me halfway, catching me in his arms and holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. You're okay, he murmured against my hair. Thank God. You're okay. What's happening? I pulled back to look at him. In the harsh lights of the airfield, I could see the strain in his face. The tight set of his jaw, the shadows under his eyes, the barely controlled fury simmering beneath his composure. Dominic, talk to me. On the plane, once we're in the air. He guided me toward the stairs, one hand at my back, the other resting near his jacket in a way that suggested he was armed. The realization sent a chill through me. I'll explain everything. I promise. The jet's interior was familiar. Leather seats, expensive with paneling. The flight attendant who offered coffee with professional calm despite the early hour, but the presence of 2 additional men I didn't recognize, both with the unmistakable bearing of private security, made it clear this wasn't a normal trip. Once we were airborne, Dominic finally spoke. 3 weeks ago, I received the first threat, anonymous email, vague warning about my ill-advised engagement and how it would cost me more than money. He sat across from me, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly. I had my security team trace it. Dead end. Routed through multiple servers. Impossible track. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought it was just talk. Corporate intimidation. Someone trying to rattle me before a major acquisition. His jaw tightened. I was wrong. The threats escalated. More specific, more detailed. Information about you, about your schedule, about vulnerabilities in both our security systems. Someone was watching us. Yes, and tonight they made their move. Dominic's eyes were hard. 6 men attempted to breach Ashford Manor. Professional team, military-grade equipment, clear objective, my private server, which contains information about you, about our relationship, about business deals that could be used as leverage. Did they get anything? No. My security team stopped them. But Elena, he leaned forward, taking my hands. 2 men escaped. We have no idea where they are or what their next move will be. And until I know you're safe, until I've identified and eliminated the threat, I need you somewhere they can't find you. So, where are we going? British Virgin Islands. I have a property there. Small, isolated, unknown to anyone outside my closest circle. You'll stay there with round-the-clock security until this is resolved. I stared at him, processing. You're hiding me on an island. I'm protecting you. There's a difference. For how long? However long it takes. His voice was firm. Days, weeks, I don't care. Your safety is the only thing that matters. Anger flared hot and sudden. And what about the wedding? We're supposed to get married in 3 weeks, Dominic. 300 guests have been invited. Plans have been made. You're just going to cancel everything and hide me away indefinitely. If that's what it takes to keep you alive, yes. His expression was unyielding. I don't care about the wedding. Elena, I care about you. We can get married later, somewhere else, with different plans. But we can't do any of that if you're dead. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic. His voice rose, control finally slipping. These people tried to break into my home, had gear sophisticated enough to bypass millions of dollars in security measures, knew enough about my systems to get within 50 feet of my bedroom before being stopped. You think they won't come after you next? That they won't use you as leverage to get what they want? So your solution is to lock me away? Control my life, my movements, my safety without giving me any say in the matter? I stood, needing space despite the confined cabin. This is exactly what I was afraid of. You using your resources to manage me like another variable in your business calculations. Dominic stood too, his height and intensity suddenly overwhelming in the small space. This isn't about control. This is about keeping you alive long enough to marry you. By making decisions for me. By hiding information. By treating me like property to be secured rather than a partner with agency. My voice broke despite my attempt at steadiness. You said you loved me, that I was your equal. But the first time things get difficult, you revert to exactly this. The ruthless billionaire who solves problems by throwing money and security at them without consulting anyone. What would you have me do? His frustration was palpable. Wait for them to make another attempt? Risk your life so you can feel consulted? I'm trying to protect you. Elena, why are you fighting me on this? Because I need to know that marrying you doesn't mean surrender my autonomy. That when we face problems, and there will be problems, Dominic, many of them, you won't just make executive decisions and expect me to comply. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the cabin's warmth. I need to know I'm marrying a partner, not a benevolent dictator. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the jet's engines. Dominic stood frozen, his expression cycling through frustration, anger, and finally, understanding. You're right. The admission came quietly. I should have called you when the first threat came in. Should have involved you in security decisions. Should have asked what you wanted rather than just making arrangements. He moved closer, not touching but near enough that I could feel his warmth. I'm not good at this. The partnership part. My instinct is to identify problems and solve them as efficiently as possible. But you're not a problem to be solved, and I'm sorry I've been treating you like one. Some of my anger deflated at his honesty. I understand you're scared. I'm scared too. But Dominic, if we're going to make this work, the marriage, the life together, you need to include me in decisions that affect me. Not just security, but everything. We're supposed to be equals. I know. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his hands settled on my shoulders. Here's what I should have said when I called. Elena, there's been a threat against us both. I've arranged for a secure location where we can stay together until my security team identifies the people responsible. Would you be willing to go there with me? To trust me to keep us both safe while we figure out our next steps together? Despite everything, I felt a smile tug at my lips. That's much better. I'm learning. His expression softened. So what do you say? Will you come with me to the island? Not because I'm ordering you, but because you trust me to protect us both. I thought about refusing on principle, about insisting we face this threat in Virginia, maintain our normal lives, refuse to be intimidated. But the fear in Dominic's eyes, the genuine, bone-deep terror that something might happen to me, made the decision easy. Yes, I'll go with you. At his visible relief, I added, but we're discussing everything. The security situation, the wedding plans, what happens next. Together, as partners. As partners, he agreed, pulling me into his arms. I promise. We held each other as the jet carried us south, toward an island I'd never heard of and a future that was increasingly uncertain. But despite the fear, despite the anger that still simmered beneath the surface, I felt oddly calm, because we had our first real fight and survived it, had established boundaries and expectations, had proven we could challenge each other and find middle ground. Maybe that's what love was, not the absence of conflict, but the willingness to work through it together. The island was beautiful in the way remote Caribbean destinations always were. White sand beaches, crystalline water, lush vegetation that hadn't been manicured into submission. The house was smaller than I'd expected, given Dominic's usual taste for grandeur. modern but not ostentatious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean and an infinity pool that seemed to spill directly into the sea. It was my mother's, Dominic explained as we entered. She bought it years before she died, said she needed somewhere she could disappear when the world got too loud. After she passed, my father never came here. Too many memories, but I've kept it maintained. It's beautiful. It's remote. The nearest inhabited island is 30 miles away, accessible only by boat or helicopter. No one knows about this place except Angelo and my head of security. He set down our bags, his expression serious. We're safe here, Elena, I promise. The security team that had accompanied us on the plane was already setting up equipment, cameras, sensors, communication systems. Within an hour, the small house had been transformed into a fortress, albeit an elegant one. How long do you think we'll need to stay? I asked, watching the sun set over the ocean from the master bedroom's private balcony. Dominic joined me, his arms circling my waist from behind. My team is working around the clock to identify who's behind the threats. Could be days, could be weeks. But however long it takes, we're staying until it's resolved. What about your business? The deals you have in process? Being handled remotely. My senior team knows how to manage without me breathing down their necks. He pressed a kiss to my temple. The world won't fall apart if I take a few weeks away. And even if it did, you're more important. The declaration warmed something in my chest. What about the wedding? 3 weeks, Dominic. We're supposed to get married in 3 weeks. We'll still get married. Just maybe not on the original date, not in the original location. He turned me in his arms, his expression intense. I don't care where or when, Elena. I just care that it happens. That you become my wife officially, legally, permanently. Your father would say you're being impractical. That you should handle the business first, deal with emotions later. My father was wrong about a lot of things. Dominic's voice was firm. He put business above everything. Above my mother, above me, above his own happiness. And what did it get him? A company that was outdated by the time he died, a son who couldn't wait to sell it, and a wife who died thinking she'd never been his first priority. The pain in that admission made my heart ache. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me what not to do, what not to become. His hands cupped my face. You're my first priority. Elena, always. The business, the money, the reputation. None of it matters if I lose you. I kissed him, pouring weeks of tension and fear and love into the contact. He responded with matching intensity, his control finally shattering as he lifted me, carrying me back inside to the bed we'd be sharing for however long this exile lasted. 3 weeks. I murmured against his mouth. We were supposed to wait 3 more weeks. Plans change. His lips found my neck, sending shivers through me. And I've waited long enough to have you in my bed again. To remind you exactly why marrying me is a good idea, despite my tendency toward high-handed decisions. I laughed, the sound breathless as his hands found the hem of my shirt. That's quite an argument. I'm very persuasive. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes, and the hunger I saw there stole my breath. Tell me to stop, and I will. But Elena, I need you. Need to feel you alive and safe in mine. Then take me. I pulled him down for another kiss. Make me yours. Again and always. And he did, with a reverence and intensity that left us both shaking. This wasn't the gentle introduction of New York, or the desperate claiming of that first night. This was 2 people who'd fought and reconciled, who'd faced fear together and come out stronger. This was love, complicated and messy, and absolutely worth fighting for. The next 2 weeks develop a rhythm. Mornings spent on the beach, swimming in impossibly clear water, and pretending we were on vacation rather than in hiding. Afternoons working, Dominic on his laptop managing business remotely, me on my thesis, which was finally coming together. Evenings cooking together in the small kitchen, discovering we both had strong opinions about proper pasta preparation and whether cilantro belonged in salsa. Nights tangled together in bed, learning each other's bodies with a kind of thorough attention that only time and privacy allowed. It should have been idyllic, and in many ways it was, but underneath the surface calm, Tension built. Dominic was in constant contact with the security team, and I could see the frustration mounting as each lead turned cold. Each potential suspect proved innocent. "They're good," he admitted one night, staring at his laptop screen with barely controlled fury. "Whoever planned this covered their tracks thoroughly. No digital footprint, no money trail, no connection to any of my known enemies." "What if it's not about you?" I suggested, setting aside my own work. "What if the target is me? My father's political career is enemies?" Dominic's expression darkened. "I've had that thought. Your father's been running interference on his end, checking his own contacts, his political adversaries. So far, nothing. So we're stuck. No closer to answers than we were 2 weeks ago. Not stuck. Just—" He stopped at the sound of his phone ringing. Angelo's name flashed on the screen. Dominic answered immediately, putting it on speaker. "Talk to me. We have something." Angelo's voice was grim. One of the men we apprehended finally broke. Gave us a name. "Who?" "Richard Thornton." Ice flooded my veins. My father's campaign manager's husband? The one on the Senate Finance Committee? Former committee member, Angelo corrected. He was forced to resign 6 months ago after an ethics investigation that Dominic's testimony helped initiate. I looked at Dominic, who'd gone very still. "You testified against him?" "He was taking bribes from companies I was trying to acquire, using his position to block deals, demanding payment to let them through." Dominic's voice was flat. "I reported him. He lost his seat, his reputation, his political future. I didn't think—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "I didn't consider he might retaliate. He didn't just lose his career," Angelo continued. "His wife divorced him. His children won't speak to him. He's been drinking heavily, making threats. But we didn't take him seriously because he seemed like a broken man. Turns out he was just planning carefully." "Where is he now?" Dominic's voice had gone cold. "In custody. FBI took him an hour ago. The 2 men who escaped led us right to him. He'd been hiding them at a property he inherited from his mother. They're all facing federal charges. Multiple counts. Relief so intense it made me dizzy washed through me. It's over. It's over," Angelo confirmed. "You're safe to come home, Miss Castellane. Both of you." After the call ended, Dominic and I sat in silence for a long moment. Then he stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "I did this." His voice was rough. "My actions, my testimony. I put you in danger. You did the right thing. Reporting corruption. Standing up to someone abusing their position." I moved to stand beside him. "You couldn't have known he'd retaliate this way." "I should have." He turned to face me, anguish clear in his expression. "I've made plenty of enemies. Elena, I should have anticipated that they might try to hurt me by hurting you. Should have had better security in place. Should have—" "Stop." I gripped his shoulders. "You can't predict every threat, prevent every danger. All you can do is respond when it happens. And you did. You got me somewhere safe. You worked to identify the threat. You protected us both. That's enough, Dominic. You're enough." He pulled me close, burying his face in my hair. When Angelo called about the breach, when I realized someone had gotten that close to my home, to you, I've never been that terrified in my life. Not when my mother died, not when my father died. Nothing has ever scared me like the thought of losing you. You didn't lose me. I'm right here." I held him tighter. "And I'm not going anywhere." We stood like that for a long time, holding each other while the sun set over the ocean and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. Crisis survived. Threat eliminated. Future secured. "We should go home," Dominic said finally. "Get back to Virginia. Resume wedding planning. We only have a week now. 1 week until you become my wife." 1 week. I pulled back to look at him. "Are you ready for that? For marriage? For everything that comes with it? I've been ready since the moment you walked into my study and agreed to this insane arrangement." His smile was soft. "Actually, probably before that. Probably from the moment I saw your photo and thought, she looks like she needs saving. I wonder if she'd let me try." "I didn't need saving." "No, you needed a partner. Someone who'd fight alongside you rather than fight for you. He cupped my face. That's what I want to be. Elena, your partner, your equal, the person you turn to when the world gets too loud, the way my mother used to escape to this island. Tears pricked my eyes. That's what I want too. What I've always wanted without knowing how to ask for it. Then let's go home. Let's get married in 1 week, like we planned. Let's start the rest of our lives. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. Together, as partners, as equals, as two people who are probably insane, but don't care because they love each other anyway. Definitely insane, I agreed, smiling through my tears. But I wouldn't have it any other way. We flew home the next morning, leaving the island's paradise behind, but taking with us something more valuable, certainty. Certainty that we could face threats together, that we could fight and reconcile. That love wasn't about perfection, but about choosing each other even when it was difficult. Especially when it was difficult. 1 week until the wedding. 1 week until I became Elena Ashford officially, legally, permanently. I couldn't wait. Chapter 8, the week before. Virginia in early October was beautiful. The leaves just beginning to turn, the air crisp with the promise of autumn, the light taking on that golden quality that made everything seem slightly magical. Perfect weather for a wedding, everyone said, as if nature itself was blessing our union. I stood in the bridal boutique's fitting room, staring at my reflection in my mother's wedding dress. It had been altered to fit me. Taken in at the waist, shortened slightly, the delicate lace sleeves adjusted. The seamstress had done miraculous work, but seeing myself in the gown made my throat tight with emotion. My mother had worn this dress 30 years ago, marrying my father in the same church where I would marry Dominic in 6 days. She'd been happy then, or so the photos suggested, young and hopeful, and convinced she was marrying the love of her life. How long had it taken for that hope to fade? For her to realize my father loved his political career more than he could ever love a person? You look beautiful, sweetheart. My father's voice came from behind me. He'd insisted on accompanying me to this final fitting. Despite my protest that it was traditionally bad luck for the father to see the dress. I looked like Mom. I touched the lace at my throat, the same spot where she'd worn a strand of pearls. Is that strange? Wearing her dress to marry a man she never met. I think she would have liked Dominic. My father moved to stand beside me, his reflection joining mine in the three-way mirror. He's strong-willed, protective, refuses to back down when he believes he's right. She would have appreciated that, even if it drove her crazy. Like you drove her crazy? Yes. His admission was quiet. I wasn't a good husband. Elena. I prioritized my career, my ambitions, everything that seemed important at the time. And by the time I realized what I'd lost, that she was slipping away from me, it was too late. The cancer had already taken hold. I turned to look at him directly, surprised by this rare moment of vulnerability. Do you regret it? The choices you made. Every day. His eyes were bright, with unshed tears. But I can't change the past. All I can do is try not to repeat those mistakes. Try to be better for you, even if I'm decades too late. You're here now. That counts for something. I squeezed his hand. And for what it's worth, I forgive you for selling me to solve your problems, for prioritizing politics over family, for all of it. I forgive you, Dad. He pulled me into a tight embrace, and for a moment I was 8 years old again, being held by my father after my mother's funeral. Back then, I'd thought he was invincible, that nothing could break Robert Castellane. Now I understood he was just a man, flawed and complicated, and trying his best, even when his best wasn't enough. Dominic called me yesterday. My father said as we pulled apart, asked for my blessing. Formally, properly, the way it should have been done from the start. What did you tell him? That he had it. That despite my initial reservations, despite everything that's happened, I can see he loves you. And more importantly, that you love him. He smoothed a wrinkle in the dress's skirt. That's all any father can hope for. That his daughter finds someone who sees her worth and cherishes it. He does. I smiled at my reflection, at the woman wearing her mother's dress, about to marry a man who'd started as a transaction, but became everything. He cherishes me in ways I didn't know I needed to be cherished. Good. My father kissed my forehead. Then I'll walk you down that aisle in 6 days with a genuine smile. And maybe even mean it when I give you away. The bachelorette party happened 3 days before the wedding, organized by Dominic's mother's friends despite my protest that I barely knew them. But they'd been insistent. Tradition demanded it. And besides, it would be good for me to bond with the women who would be part of my social circle as Mrs. Ashford. The gathering was held in an exclusive spa outside Richmond. Massages, facials, champagne, and 12 women I'd met briefly at the engagement party, who all seemed to know intimate details about my life that I'd never shared. So the island, one of them, Patricia, wife of a hedge fund manager, said as we soaked in the hot tub, "Was it romantic? Being stranded together for 2 weeks." We weren't stranded. We were. I stopped, realizing anything I said would be dissected and gossiped about. It was nice, quiet, a good chance to spend time together before the wedding. Away from prying eyes, another woman, Margaret, I thought, added with a knowing look, "Smart of Dominic. Men always want to have their cake, and eat it too before the wedding makes it official." Heat flooded my face. It wasn't like that. Of course not, dear. But her smile suggested she didn't believe me. Though between us girls, is he as intense as they say? All that ruthless billionaire energy has to go somewhere. Margaret, Patricia laughed. "You're making the poor girl blush." "I'm just saying, a man who destroys careers and takes no prisoners in business probably has interesting appetites in the bedroom." Margaret leaned closer, her champagne-loosened tongue removing any filter. "Come on, Elena, give us something. Is he worth the risk you're taking?" "Risk?" I kept my voice level despite my discomfort. Marrying someone so powerful, so dangerous, so completely capable of crushing you if things go wrong. Margaret's expression was sympathetic, but pointed. We've all seen what happens to people who cross Dominic Ashford. It's not pretty. I'm not planning to cross him. No one ever plans to. But marriages are hard, sweetie. People change, feelings evolve. What seems like love turns into resentment. She took another sip of champagne. "I'm just saying, know what you're getting into. Once you sign those papers, once you become Mrs. Ashford, there's no easy escape. Not from a man like that." The words hit closer to my own fears than I wanted to admit. I stood, needing distance from Margaret's wine-fueled observations. "Excuse me. I need some air." I found myself on the spa's terrace, wrapped in a plush robe and staring at the Virginia countryside. The sun was setting, painting everything gold and crimson. In 3 days, I'd stand in a church and promise forever to a man who terrified and exhilarated me in equal measure. Was I making a mistake? Was Margaret right, that once I became his wife, I'd be trapped in ways I couldn't yet imagine? Don't let her get to you. I turned to find Diane Pemberton, the woman who'd assessed me at the engagement party, standing in the doorway. Margaret's been divorced 3 times. She projects her failed marriages onto everyone else's relationships. Maybe she has a point, though. Maybe I am being naive. Maybe Diane moved to stand beside me. Or maybe you're being brave. It takes courage to marry for love in our world. Elena, most of us marry for security, for social position, for family alliances. You're marrying a man you actually care about. That's rare, precious even. Dominic and I started as an arrangement, a business deal, and became something else. I saw you two together at the engagement party. That wasn't performance. That was real connection, real attraction. Diane smiled slightly. Dominic's mother was my dearest friend. I knew him as a child, watched him grow into the man he is now. And I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you, like you're the answer to a question he didn't know he was asking. Tears pricked my eyes. I'm scared of getting this wrong, of hurting him, of being hurt. That's how you know it's real. If you weren't scared, you wouldn't care enough for it to matter. Diane squeezed my shoulder. Margaret's right about one thing. Dominic is dangerous, powerful, capable of destruction. But he's also capable of fierce loyalty, of dedication, of loving so completely it consumes him. His mother was the same way. All or nothing. No middle ground. What if I'm not enough? What if I can't match that intensity? You already do. Why do you think he's marrying you? Diane's smile was warm. Now come back inside. We have cake to eat and embarrassing stories about Dominic's childhood to share. Did you know he once tried to buy his way out of detention by offering his teacher stock options? Despite myself, I laughed. That's very on brand. Oh, honey, you have no idea. The rest of the party was easier after that conversation. The women shared stories about Dominic's mother, how she'd been artistic and fierce and completely devoted to her son, how she made them all promise to look after him if anything happened to her, how she'd known, even before the cancer diagnosis, that her time was limited and she needed to teach him everything she could while she had the chance. By the time I left the spa, slightly drunk on champagne and considerably less anxious, I understood something important. I wasn't just marrying Dominic. I was marrying into a community of women who'd loved his mother and would, by extension, watch over me. It was overwhelming and comforting in equal measure. My phone buzzed with a text from Dominic. How was the torture session? I smiled and typed back. Survived. Barely. How's your bachelor party? Boring. All the interesting debauchery requires your presence, and you're busy being pampered. Debauchery can wait 3 more days. An eternity. I miss you. The simple declaration made my heart clench. We'd been apart for less than 12 hours, and I missed him too, his intensity, his rare smiles, the way he looked at me like I was something precious. Miss you too, I typed. See you at the rehearsal dinner tomorrow? Counting the hours. I love you, Elena. Love you too. The rehearsal dinner was held at Ashford Manor the night before the wedding. Dominic had insisted on hosting despite tradition, suggesting the bride's family should handle it. But as he pointed out, he had better facilities and deeper pockets. And did I really want to argue about tradition at this point? I conceded, mostly because he was right, and also because the manor had become familiar territory over the past weeks. Almost home, though that word still felt strange applied to a Gothic mansion full of contemporary art and a man who could be ruthless or tender depending on the moment. I arrived early to help with last-minute preparations, though help mostly meant standing back while Mrs. Thornberry and her staff executed Dominic's precise vision with military efficiency. The formal dining room had been transformed. Candles everywhere, flowers and arrangements that managed to be both elegant and slightly wild, place settings that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Too much. Dominic's voice came from behind me. I turned to find him watching from the doorway, vulnerability in his expression that most people would never see. He was worried I'd think this was excessive, that he'd overdone it in his desire to make everything perfect. It's beautiful, I assured him, crossing the room to take his hands. Perfect, actually. You have good taste. I hired professionals with good taste. I just paid them. But he was smiling now, relieved. Are you nervous? About tomorrow? Terrified. I admit it, but in a good way. The way you're supposed to be scared before doing something important. I'm not scared at all. At my surprised look, he elaborated. I'm marrying the woman I love. The woman who challenges me and sees past my reputation and calls me on my bullshit. There's nothing to be scared of in that. Only everything to look forward to. When did you become such a romantic? When I fell in love with you. Turns out I have hidden depths. He pulled me closer, his arms circling my waist. Though I'll deny saying any of this if you repeat it to my board of directors. Your secret's safe with me. I kissed him, soft and sweet. Thank you for all of this, for making tomorrow special, for... Don't thank me. His voice was rough. This is the bare minimum of what you deserve. Tomorrow, when we say our vows, when I make promises to you in front of everyone we know, that's when I start really showing you what you mean to me. Before I could respond, voices drifted from the entrance hall. Guests arriving. Family gathering. The final rehearsal about to begin. Dominic kissed me once more, then stepped back. Ready to practice getting married? As ready as I'll ever be. The rehearsal was chaotic and awkward, and exactly what it needed to be. My father fumbled his lines about giving me away. The minister got confused about the order of vows. The flower girl, daughter of one of my father's staffers, burst into tears and refused to walk down the aisle. But through it all, Dominic remained steady beside me, his hand in mine, his presence grounding. This was my future. This man who could command boardrooms but stood patiently while a 6-year-old had a meltdown about rose petals. Who listened intently as the minister explained symbolism in traditional vows. Who looked at me throughout the entire rehearsal like I was the only person in the room. Dinner afterward was an intimate gathering. Immediate family and wedding party only, about 30 people. Dominic and I sat at the head table, and I watched him interact with my father and his business associates and the friends I'd made over the past weeks. He was different with each person, professional with business contacts, respectful with my father, warm with the few people he truly trusted. But with me, he was something else entirely. His hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. He leaned close to whisper observations that made me laugh. He looked at me with such open affection that several people commented on how in love we seemed. They had no idea it started as a transaction, that we'd agreed to marry before we'd agreed to love each other, that everything we were now had been built on a foundation of desperation and debt and mutual benefit. Or maybe they did know, and it didn't matter, because what we'd started as was irrelevant compared to what we'd become. Speech time, Angelo announced, standing with his glass raised. As Dominic's oldest friend and head of security, which is basically the same thing as World, I'd like to say a few words. Dominic groaned. Please be kind. When have I ever been kind? Angelo smiled. I've known Dominic for 15 years. Watched him build an empire, make enemies, destroy anyone who dared cross him. He's been called ruthless, calculating, cold. And those people weren't entirely wrong. This is a great speech so far, Dominic muttered. But, Angelo continued, in all those years, I never saw him truly happy. Satisfied, sure. Successful, absolutely. But happy? That required Elena. He looked at me directly. You've done something no one else could. Made him remember he's human. Made him want something beyond the next deal, the next acquisition, the next win. So thank you for loving him despite his considerable flaws, for challenging him when he needs it, for making tomorrow's wedding about more than just legal contracts and social obligations. Glasses clinked as people toasted. I felt tears prick my eyes, but blinked them back, not wanting to ruin my makeup before tomorrow's actual ceremony. My father stood next. I've made many mistakes in my life, he began, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. But the worst one was almost costing my daughter the chance at real happiness. Elena, he looked at me directly. I arranged this marriage for selfish reasons. But watching you with Dominic over these past weeks, I've realized something. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones we make for the wrong reasons. Tomorrow, you're marrying a good man. An intense, occasionally frightening, absolutely devoted good man. And I couldn't be more proud. The tears I've been holding back spilled over. Dominic's arm came around my shoulders, pulling me close, and I buried my face in his jacket. You're making her cry, he said to my father, but there was no heat in it, though fair point about the frightening part. You're not frightening, I murmured against his chest. You're just intense. Several people supplied in unison, and everyone laughed. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of toasts and laughter and last-minute coordination. By the time guests began leaving, I was exhausted and exhilarated and ready for tomorrow to arrive, so we could finally, officially, permanently become husband and wife. Dominic walked me to my car. Tradition dictated we spend this final night apart, and despite his protests, I'd insisted on honoring at least that one ritual. This is the last time I have to say goodnight to you as my fiancée, he said, pulling me close in the driveway. Tomorrow night, you'll be my wife. Legally, officially, irrevocably mine. And you'll be irrevocably mine, I pointed out. It works both ways. Thank God for that. He kissed me deeply, thoroughly, and by the time we broke apart, I was dizzy and breathless. Get some sleep? Tomorrow's going to be a long day. You too. No staying up all night working. I'll be too busy thinking about you in your wedding dress. His eyes darkened, and anticipating getting you out of it, heat flooded through me. 3 more hours. Just 3 more hours until I'm yours in every way that matters. Until we're each other's, he corrected. Partnership, remember? Equals. Equals. I agreed, kissing him once more. I love you, Dominic Ashford. I love you, Elena Castellane. His smile was soft. For the last time, tomorrow you'll be Elena Ashford, and I'll never have to say goodbye to you again. I drove home thinking about that, about how tomorrow would change everything and nothing. I'd still be me, he'd still be him, but we'd be us officially, a unit, a partnership, a marriage that had started as business but became something neither of us had planned for or expected, something real, something worth every risk, every fear, every moment of doubt that had led us here. My phone buzzed with a text as I pulled into my family's estate. Already missing you. This tradition of sleeping apart is barbaric, and I'm vetoing it for all future major life events. I laughed and typed back, noted, see you at the altar tomorrow. Don't be late. I'll be the one in the tuxedo. Try not to cry when I see you in your mother's dress. You're going to cry? Probably. Is that unmanly of me? It's perfect. You're perfect. We're perfect. Together. That's the whole point of tomorrow. Making that official. I fell asleep with my phone on the pillow beside me. Dominic's final text glowing in the darkness. Sleep well, my love. Tomorrow we start forever. Tomorrow. Forever. I couldn't wait.